Hello and thank you for joining for today's dark and scary cryptid horror stories. In the comments, I would love it if you could tell us where you are listening from and maybe what cryptids pique your interest. Now for today's stories, I hope you all enjoy. The Howling Dark. The email arrived at 3 a.m., which should have been Lena Carter's first warning. She was awake anyway, as she often was these days, staring at the ceiling of her one-bedroom apartment in Fayetteville, counting the cracks in the plaster, trying not to think about the bottle of bourbon in the kitchen cabinet. 5 years sober, 5 years of white-knuckling through every temptation, every craving, every moment of weakness. The chime of her phone was a relief from the silence. She reached for it, expecting spam, expecting nothing. Instead, she found an invitation. Dr. Carter, the message began, and she had to laugh at the title. She wasn't a doctor, not anymore. Her PhD in wildlife biology had been revoked after the incident, after the accusations, after her career had gone up in flames. She was just Lena now, unemployed, unemployable, a cautionary tale for ambitious graduate students. I represent an interested party seeking to investigate unusual wildlife activity in the Ozark Mountains. Your expertise in cryptid behavior and your unique perspectives make you ideally suited for this project. Compensation is substantial. Discretion is assured. If interested, reply to this message. No signature, no name, just an encrypted email address and a promise. Lena should have deleted it. She knew that, even as her fingers hovered over the screen. It was obviously some kind of scam, a setup, a trap. No legitimate researcher would contact her after what had happened. No sane person would want her involved in any project. But the word compensation kept catching her eye. She was 3 months behind on rent. Her savings were depleted. Her unemployment benefits had run out last week. And there was something else. The phrase unusual wildlife activity. The implication of cryptid behavior. Someone out there knew about her real work, her real interest, the research that had gotten her expelled from academia. Someone believed. She typed a reply before she could stop herself. I'm interested, tell me more. The response came 2 minutes later. Meet me at the Blue Mountain Diner, Wednesday, 9 a.m., come alone. Lena stared at the message for a long time, the bourbon in the kitchen cabinet calling to her like an old friend. She could go, she told herself, just to hear what they had to say, just to see what the offer was. She didn't have to commit to anything. She didn't have to become who she used to be. But as she finally drifted off to sleep, the bottle of bourbon still unopened on the counter, she knew that she was already committed. She was going to the Blue Mountain Diner. She was going to take the meeting. She was going to say yes to whatever they offered. Because she had nothing left to lose. And because, deep down in the part of her that the booze and the disgrace hadn't killed, she still believed. She still believed that there were things in the world that science couldn't explain, things that lurked in the dark, things that hunted. Things like the Howler. Travis Boone looked exactly like his name suggested. He was 6'2", broad-shouldered, with a beard that hadn't seen a trim in months and eyes that held the kind of distance that came from looking at horizons most people never imagined. He was wearing a flannel shirt that had seen better decades and a trucker hat with a cryptid logo that Lena didn't recognize. Dr. Carter, he said as she approached his booth, thanks for coming. Just Lena, I'm not a doctor anymore. I know, the incident with the Patterson footage, the accusations of fabrication, the expulsion. He smiled and it transformed his face from threatening to warm. I also know you were right about the Patterson creature. It was real. Lena felt her heart stutter. You know about Patterson? I know about a lot of things. I'm a Boone. My family has been hunting these woods since before they were the Ozarks. We've seen things, Dr. Carter, things that would make a scientist's hair turn white. And we've learned to keep our mouths shut about them because nobody believes until they've seen it themselves. And you've seen what exactly? Travis reached into his bag and pulled out a tablet. He swiped through several screens, then turned it to face her. 3 weeks ago, a farmer in Newton County reported losing 17 head of cattle in a single night. Not stolen, not slaughtered by predators, just gone, disappeared from a locked barn. No sign of forced entry, no tracks, no blood. Lena looked at the images on the screen. Empty barn, open gate, untouched locks. Could be rustlers. The next night, the same farmer found this. The image changed. Lena felt her breath catch. It was a photograph of something that looked like a deer, but wrong. The body was eviscerated, organs removed with surgical precision. But that wasn't the disturbing part. The organs were arranged, placed carefully around the body in a spiral pattern like a mandala, like an offering. That's ritualistic behavior, Lena said, her professional instincts kicking in despite herself. Predators don't do that, even smart predators. This is something else. That's what I thought, and there's more. He swiped again. More images, more evidence. Mutilated livestock from across the region, all bearing the same signature. The spiral pattern, the precision, the absence of tracks or other evidence. I've been tracking it for 3 months, Travis said. Since the first reports, it's moving west, following the ridges, staying in the high country. It's smart, Dr. Carter. Smarter than any animal has a right to be, and it's getting bolder. You think it's a cryptid? I think it's the Howler. Travis leaned forward, his voice dropping to a whisper. You've heard the stories, the Boone family legend. The thing that stalked my ancestor Daniel in these woods, that hunted the settlers, that made a pact with the devil. I thought that was just folklore. All folklore is just history that hasn't been proven yet. Travis tapped the tablet, bringing up an image of an old journal page, handwritten, faded. This is from 1821. My great-great-great-grandfather's account of an encounter. He called it the Horned Shadow, the Howling Dark. He said it was ancient, older than the hills, and that it hunted not for food but for pleasure. Lena stared at the handwritten text, deciphering the archaic script. It remembers, she read aloud. It waits, it knows our faces. When the blood flows, it feeds. When the blood stops, it sleeps. But it never dies, it never forgets, and it always returns. My ancestor didn't kill it, Travis said. He made a deal. Sacrificed animals, then people, to keep it satisfied. The Boone family has been feeding it for 5 generations, keeping it quiet, keeping it hidden. But I won't do it anymore. I won't let it hunt my people. I want to end it. And you need me for that. I need a biologist, someone who understands animal behavior, who can predict its movements, who can help me set a trap that will actually work. Someone who won't laugh when I say I want to kill a monster. Lena looked at the images again. The mutilated cattle, the spiral patterns, the ancient journal. She thought of the Patterson footage, the creature she'd glimpsed in the shadows of that Pacific Northwest forest, the thing that had cost her everything. She thought of the bourbon in her kitchen cabinet. I'm in, she said. The team assembled over the next week. Travis had recruited carefully, selecting people who had reasons to believe, reasons to fight, reasons to risk their lives for something most of the world would call madness. Jace Harding was first, a survivalist, former Army Ranger, expert in wilderness tracking and extraction. He was 30, built like a linebacker, with a cocky grin and a YouTube channel where he documented his expeditions into remote places. He had seen something in the Yukon 2 years ago, something he wouldn't talk about, but that had left him with a scar that ran from his ear to his collarbone, and a habit of checking the treetops whenever he entered the woods. Monsters are real, he told Lena when they met. I've seen them. Most people haven't, and that's fine. They can live in their safe little worlds, but me, I want to hunt the things that hunt us. Daryl Chen came next, a journalist, skeptical, cynical, the voice of reason that every expedition needed. He was 45, a veteran of war zones and disaster areas, with a Pulitzer for his coverage of the 2010 earthquake in Haiti. He had requested this assignment specifically, though he wouldn't say why. He had theories about mass hysteria, about environmental explanations for cryptid sightings, about the psychology of belief. "I'm here to document," he told Lena. "Whatever we find, I'm going to report accurately. If it's a bear with mange, I'll say it's a bear with mange. If it's something else," he shrugged, "then I'll report that too, but I'm not going to let fear or folklore distort my observations." The last to arrive was Myra Ortiz, and she was the one Lena had been dreading. They had been married for 8 years, divorced for 3. The Patterson incident had destroyed their relationship as thoroughly as it had destroyed Lena's career. Myra had been a fellow academic, a rising star in conservation biology, and she had watched her wife throw it all away on a grainy video and a story nobody believed. "Travis asked me to come," Myra said, her voice carefully neutral. "He said you were part of the team. I almost backed out." "I can leave if you want." "No." Myra met her eyes and Lena saw something there, not forgiveness, not yet, but possibility. "I'm here to do a job. You're here to do a job. We can be professional." Professional, right. Myra was a park ranger now, working for the National Park Service, stationed at the Buffalo National River. She knew these woods, these mountains, these people. She had grown up in Harrison, Arkansas, had played in these forests as a child, had heard the stories about the howler around campfires and at family gatherings. "I always thought they were just stories," she admitted as they sat around the campfire that first night. "Boogermen to keep kids from wandering too far from home, but after Patterson, after what you showed me, I started wondering, what if the stories are true? What if there's something out there?" "There is," Lena said. "I've seen it. Not the howler specifically, but something like it. Something that shouldn't exist but does." "And you think we can kill it?" "I think we have to try." They sat in silence for a while, listening to the forest. It was late September, the leaves just beginning to turn, the air carrying the first hints of autumn chill. The fire crackled, casting shadows that danced on the trees, and Lena found herself watching those shadows with a paranoia she hadn't felt in years. "We'll start tomorrow," Travis said, rousing himself from his own contemplation. "Head up to the ridge where the last kills were reported. Set up cameras, sensors, traps. If this thing is as smart as the stories say, it won't be easy to catch. But if we work together, if we use our heads, we might have a chance." "And if we don't?" Daryl asked. Travis looked at him, his face unreadable in the firelight. "Then we die, just like all the others who have tried to hunt this thing, just like my ancestors who fed it to keep it quiet, just like every victim it's taken over the centuries." "Comforting," Jace muttered. "I'm not here to comfort you. I'm here to kill a monster. If that's not what you signed up for, you can leave now." Nobody left. They sat around the fire until the stars emerged, the Milky Way a bright band across the sky, the darkness between the trees absolute. And then, just as they were preparing to turn in, they heard it. A howl. It started low, guttural, like a wolf's cry, but deeper, more resonant. Then it rose higher and higher, becoming something that no wolf could produce, a shriek, a scream, a sound that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. The howl continued for 30 seconds, maybe longer, rising and falling in a pattern that almost sounded like language, like words, like a sentence spoken in a voice that had never been human. Then silence. "Holy shit," Jace whispered. "What was that?" Daryl asked, his skepticism forgotten. "The howler," Travis said, and his voice was steady, controlled, but Lena could see the fear in his eyes. "It knows we're here. It's welcoming us." "Welcoming?" Myra's voice shook. That sounded like a threat. "Same thing with this creature." Travis stood, scanning the tree line with a flashlight. "It likes to play with its food. It'll stalk us for days, maybe weeks, before it attacks. Learn our patterns, our weaknesses, our fears. Then when we're at our most vulnerable." He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. They slept in shifts that night, two awake at all times, watching the darkness. Lena took the first watch with Jace, sitting by the dying fire, listening to the forest. "You believe in this stuff," Jace said. It wasn't a question. "I do." "Why?" Lena thought about the Patterson footage, the creature she'd seen in the shadows, the way it had moved, the intelligence in its eyes. She thought about the years of research, the patterns she'd discovered, the evidence that nobody would look at because it contradicted everything they thought they knew. "Because I've seen it," she said finally. "And once you've seen something like that, you can't unsee it. You can't go back to believing the world is safe, that science explains everything, that we're the top of the food chain." "We're not the top. We're not even close." They sat in silence after that, listening to the forest breathe. Around 3 a.m., Lena heard something moving in the trees, something heavy, something that moved with purpose. She raised her rifle, tracking the sound with her flashlight, but saw nothing. Whatever it was watching them, waiting, learning. The game had begun. The second day brought discoveries that should have been impossible. They found the first kill site at dawn, a deer, eviscerated, organs arranged in the spiral pattern Travis had shown them in the photographs. But this was fresh, the blood still wet, the body still warm. "It was here," Lena said, kneeling beside the carcass. "While we were setting up camp, while we were listening to it howl. It was here, killing this deer while we were distracted." "Smart," Jay said, his eyes scanning the tree line. "Strategic." "Predatory," Myra added. "This isn't just hunting, this is communication. It's showing us what it can do, demonstrating its power." "It's showing off," Daryl said, but his voice lacked conviction. "Playing with us." "Yes," Travis agreed. "That's exactly what it's doing." They documented the scene with cameras, collected samples of blood and tissue, searched for tracks or other evidence. They found nothing. No footprints, no broken branches, no sign of passage. The creature had come and gone like a ghost, leaving only the dead deer and its macabre arrangement. "This is impossible," Daryl said, reviewing the footage on his camera. "Something that size should leave tracks, should disturb the vegetation, should be detectable." "It's not a normal animal," Lena said. "It doesn't follow normal rules." "That's not an explanation, that's an excuse." "It's the only explanation we have." They moved on, following Travis's planned route up the ridge toward the higher elevations. The forest grew denser as they climbed, the undergrowth thicker, the canopy blocking out more of the sky. The temperature dropped, and Lena found herself shivering despite her jacket. They made camp that afternoon in a clearing surrounded by ancient oaks. The trees were massive, their trunks wider than cars, their branches forming a cathedral overhead. It should have felt safe, protected, sheltered. It felt like a trap. "I don't like this place," Myra said as they set up tents. "It feels wrong." "Like the trees are watching?" Jace asked. "Like the ground doesn't want us here." Travis consulted his map, his great-grandfather's journal, the GPS on his phone. "We're close," he said. "The Boone family records say the Howler's lair is somewhere in this area. A cave, a hollow, a place where the earth opens up." "And we're just going to walk into it?" Daryl asked. "Into the monster's home?" "We have to. It's the only way to kill it." "How do you know?" "Because my ancestors tried everything else. Traps, poisons, fire, guns. Nothing worked. The only way to kill it is to surprise it in its lair, to attack it where it feels safest." "And if that doesn't work?" Travis met his eyes. "Then we die, like I said." They slept fitfully that night, the howling having ceased but its memory lingering. Lena dreamed of Patterson, of the creature she'd seen in the shadows, of the way it had looked at her with intelligence and hunger and something else, something that might have been recognition. She woke to screaming. It was Jace, his voice high and terrified, coming from the edge of the camp. Lena grabbed her rifle and stumbled from her tent, her heart hammering, her mind still half in the dream. She found him standing by a tree, his flashlight beam shaking as it illuminated something on the trunk. A message. Carved into the bark deep enough to bleed sap were 3 words, "I see you." "It was here," Jace whispered, his voice barely audible. "While we were sleeping, it was here right next to us and we didn't know." "How do we know it was the creature?" Daryl asked, but he was backing away from the tree, his eyes wide. "Because I saw it," Jace said. "Just for a second, just a glimpse. It was standing right there by that tree watching us. It looked at me and it smiled. It has too many teeth." "What did you do?" "I screamed and it walked away. Just walked like it was out for a Sunday stroll, disappeared into the trees." "It wanted us to know," Lena said, understanding dawning. "It wanted us to be afraid. The message, the sighting, it's psychological warfare. It's breaking us down before it attacks." "Well, it's working," Myra said, her voice shaking. "I'm terrified." "Good," Travis said, emerging from his tent with his rifle ready. "Fear keeps you alert. Fear keeps you alive. Now pack up. We move in 10 minutes. At night." "It's hunting at night. That means we hunt at night. We won't get another chance like this." They packed in silence, every shadow seeming to hide a threat, every sound making them jump. Lena's hands shook as she rolled her sleeping bag, and she had to stop twice to take deep breaths, to center herself, to remember that she was a scientist, a rational person, not a victim. But she was afraid. They all were, and that was exactly what the Howler wanted. They moved through the forest in a line, Travis leading, Jace covering the rear, the others in between. Travis had his great-grandfather's journal open, reading by flashlight, following directions that had been written 2 centuries ago. "The hollow tree," he muttered. "The one that looks like a face, past the stone that bleeds, through the gap in the ridge." "This is insane," Daryl whispered. "We're following cryptic directions from a 200-year-old journal to find a monster's cave. This is how people die in horror movies." "Quiet," Travis snapped. "It's close, I can feel it." Lena felt it too, a pressure in the air, a wrongness that made her skin crawl. They were approaching something that didn't belong in the natural world. Then they found it. The hollow tree stood at the edge of a clearing, its trunk split by lightning or age, forming a gaping maw that looked disturbingly like a screaming face. Beyond it, a boulder sat in a pool of red water, the stone that bleeds, runoff from iron-rich soil that looked disturbingly like blood. And beyond that, a gap in the ridge, a narrow passage between 2 rock faces leading into darkness. "There," Travis said, pointing. "That's it, the Howler's lair." They approached cautiously, weapons ready, flashlights sweeping back and forth. The passage was narrow, forcing them to walk single file. The rock walls were damp, covered in moss, carved with symbols that Lena didn't recognize, spirals like the pattern from the kill sites, but older, weathered, ancient. "These markings," she said, tracing one with her finger. "They're not recent, they've been here for centuries." "The Howler is old," Travis said. "Older than the settlers, older than the Indians, maybe older than humans." "Then how do we kill something like that?" "We don't," a voice said from the darkness ahead. "It kills us." Jay stepped forward, his flashlight illuminating the speaker, and Lena felt her heart stop. It was Jace. Another Jace standing in the passage ahead of them, wearing the same clothes, carrying the same rifle, his face twisted in a mocking smile. But first, the thing wearing Jace's face said, "It plays." The thing wearing Jace's face laughed, a sound like breaking branches and screaming wind. It stepped forward, and the real Jace stumbled back, his rifle trembling in his hands. "What the hell is that?" he whispered. "The Howler," Travis said, his voice steady despite the fear in his eyes. "It can mimic us, wear our faces, use our voices." "How is that possible?" "I told you, it's not a normal animal." The mimic Jace tilted its head, the movement too sharp, too sudden. "Jace is loud," it said, using Jace's voice but with inflections that were wrong, rhythms that didn't match. "Jace is brave. Jace thinks he can fight, but Jace is already dead." It moved. The speed was impossible. One moment it was standing in the passage, the next it was on top of the real Jace, its hands. No, not hands, claws, black and curved like scythes, digging into his shoulders. Jace screamed, firing his rifle into the thing's chest. The bullet struck home, black blood spraying, but the mimic didn't slow. It lifted Jace off the ground, holding him easily despite his 200-pound frame, and grinned with too many teeth. "Jace dies first," it said, and threw him. Jace hit the rock wall with a sickening crunch, his body folding at an angle that shouldn't have been possible. He slid down, leaving a smear of blood on the stone, and lay still. "Run," Travis shouted, opening fire on the mimic. The others ran, plunging deeper into the passage, away from the creature, away from Jace's broken body. Lena heard Travis firing behind them, heard the mimic's laughter, heard the sound of pursuit. They burst from the passage into a larger space, a cavern, massive, cathedral-like, the ceiling lost in darkness above. The floor was covered in bones, thousands of them, arranged in patterns that suggested meaning without delivering it. "Trap," Myra gasped. "We've run into a trap." "Keep moving." Lena grabbed her arm, pulling her forward. "Don't stop." They ran through the bone field, stumbling on uneven ground, their flashlights revealing nightmare tableaus at every turn. Skeletons of deer, bear, humans, all arranged in spirals, in circles, in configurations that spoke of intelligence and madness. Behind them, Travis's gun went silent. "Travis," Daryl shouted, turning back. "Keep going," Lena pulled at him. "We can't help him. He's our guide, he knows how to kill it. He's dead, just like Jace, just like we'll be if we stop." They ran, the three of them now, through the cavern of bones, toward the far wall where a tunnel promised escape. The Howler's laughter followed them, echoing off the stone, seeming to come from everywhere at once. "Myra," the creature called, using Lena's voice. "Lena wants to hurt you. Lena wants to leave you behind. Trust me instead." "Don't listen," Lena shouted. "It's lying, it lies." "Does she?" The mimic appeared ahead of them, blocking the tunnel entrance, wearing Lena's face now. "Does Lena care about you, or does she care about the story, the scoop, the redemption?" Myra hesitated, her eyes flicking between the two Lenas. "Myra, it's not me," Lena screamed. Look at its eyes." The mimic's eyes were wrong. They glowed faintly with a red light like dying embers. They were hungry. They were ancient. They were not human. "The eyes," Myra whispered. "The eyes are wrong." She raised her rifle and fired. The bullet took the mimic in the shoulder, spinning it around. It shrieked, a sound like metal on metal, and dissolved into shadow, melting away into the darkness. "Run!" Lena grabbed Myra's hand, and they plunged into the tunnel, Daryl right behind them. The tunnel twisted and turned, branching and rejoining, a maze carved by water or time or something else entirely. They ran until they couldn't run anymore, collapsing against the wall, gasping for breath. "Travis is dead," Daryl said, his voice hollow. "Jace is dead, we're next." "Not if we think," Lena said, forcing herself to breathe, to focus. "We need a plan, we need weapons, we need to understand what we're dealing with." "It's a monster," Daryl shouted. "A fucking monster that can look like us and move faster than bullets and throw people through walls. What's there to understand?" "Everything." Lena pulled out Travis's journal, the one he'd shown her in the diner, the ancient record of his family's encounters. Travis said his ancestor made a pact, sacrificed to it, fed it to keep it quiet. That means it can be bargained with. That means it has needs, desires, rules. "So we offer it sacrifices?" Myra asked, her voice bitter. "Feed it Daryl so it lets us go?" "No, we find another way." They sat in silence, the darkness pressing against them, the sounds of pursuit distant but present. Lena opened the journal, her flashlight illuminating the faded pages. "The Howler is bound by blood," she read. "By the pact made with Boone, it is tied to this land, this people. It feeds on the blood of the willing as well as the unwilling. It feeds on suffering, on fear, on despair. But it can be denied. The pact can be broken. The blood can be reclaimed." How? Myra asked. "By the descendant's choice," Lena continued. "By the willing sacrifice of Boone blood, the pact can be ended. The creature can be destroyed, but the sacrifice must be total. The blood must be given freely, completely, with no hope of survival. Only then can the Howler be killed." "Travis is dead," Daryl said. "There's no Boone left to sacrifice." "There might be," Lena said slowly. "Travis mentioned something, his family's bloodline. It wasn't just his line. There were cousins, distant relatives, people who left the Ozarks generations ago. And you think one of them just happens to be here?" Lena looked at Myra. Myra looked back, understanding dawning in her eyes. "The Ortiz family," Lena said softly. "Your mother's maiden name." Myra paled. "No, no, that can't be." "Your great-grandmother, she was from Arkansas. She married your great-grandfather and moved to New Mexico, but before that, she was a Boone." "I'm not, I don't." "You're a descendant, you have Boone blood. You can end this." "By dying," Myra's voice rose, hysterical. "You want me to sacrifice myself. I want you to have a choice, the same choice Travis had, the same choice his ancestors had. You can run and let this thing keep hunting, keep killing generation after generation, or you can end it. Here. Now." "You're insane." "I'm desperate." They stared at each other in the darkness. Two women who had once loved each other, who had torn each other apart, who were now bound together by fate and fear and a monster's hunger. "There's another way," Daryl said quietly. "There's always another way." "Like what?" "We blow up the cavern, collapse the tunnels, trap it under tons of rock." "That won't kill it." "No, but it might contain it, buy time, let the next generation deal with it." "That's not a solution, that's cowardice." "It's survival." A sound echoed through the tunnels. The howl, that terrible, impossible howl, rising and falling in a pattern that almost sounded like laughter. "It's close," Lena whispered. "It's coming." "We need to move," Myra said, her decision made. "We need to find another way out, another solution that doesn't involve me dying." They gathered themselves, checked their weapons, prepared to run again. But as they turned to continue through the tunnel, they found their path blocked. Not by the Howler, by Travis. He stood in the passage, leaning heavily against the wall, his clothes torn, his face bloody but alive. In his hand he held something that glowed with a faint, sickly light, a stone, carved with the same spiral symbols they'd seen on the tunnel walls. "Travis," Lena rushed to him, supporting his weight. "You're alive." "Barely," he gasped. "The thing, it played with me, left me for dead, but I found this, in the main chamber, the Boone stone, the anchor of the pact." "What does it do?" "It controls the Howler, or it did once. My ancestor used it to bind the creature, to limit its range, to keep it from leaving the Ozarks. But the binding faded over time. The stone lost its power. The creature grew stronger." "Can you use it again?" "Maybe, if I had the right ritual, if I had the blood, if I was willing to pay the price." "What price?" Travis met her eyes and she saw the answer there. The same price his ancestors had paid, the same price the journal described: blood, life, sacrifice. "The stone needs to be fed," he said. "Blood to blood, life to life, my family's pact renewed." "Or ended," Lena said, remembering the journal's words. "The right descendant, the willing sacrifice, the total giving, it could destroy the Howler instead of feeding it." "Yes," Travis looked at Myra, understanding in his eyes. "You know then about your blood, about your heritage. I know. Will you do it? Will you end this? Myra looked at Lena, at Daryl, at the darkness that surrounded them. She thought of her life, her career, the future she had planned. She thought of the people who would die if the Howler escaped, the generations who would suffer under its hunger. She thought of Lena and what they had lost and what they might never regain. "Show me the ritual," she said. They made their stand in the main chamber, the Cathedral of Bones. Travis had led them back through the tunnels, back to the place where Jace had died, where the Howler waited with patient hunger. The creature was there, perched atop a pillar of stacked bones, its true form visible at last. It was massive, 9 feet tall, covered in black fur that seemed to absorb light. Its head was crowned with antlers, twisted and wrong, like bones that had grown instead of branching. And its eyes, those terrible, burning eyes, glowed with red fire that illuminated the chamber with a hellish glow. "The boon," it said, its voice like wind through dead leaves. "The last of the line, come to renew the pact." "Come to end it," Travis said, holding the stone aloft. "The blood that bound you will be the blood that destroys you." The Howler laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "Your ancestor tried that, your great-great-great-grandfather. He thought he could trick me, could bind me with his death. But I am older than death. I am older than blood. I am the hunger that never ends." "We'll see." Travis began the ritual, speaking words in a language that predated English, predated Spanish, predated any human tongue. The stone in his hand glowed brighter, responding to his voice, to his blood, to his will. The Howler shifted, its form blurring, becoming something else. A wolf, massive and black. A bear, hunched and hungry. A man, twisted and wrong. It was all of these and none of them, the shape behind the shapes, the hunger behind the hunt. "You cannot bind me," it said, its voice coming from everywhere at once. "You cannot kill me. You can only feed me. And you will feed me, all of you. Your fear, your despair, your death, these are my meat and drink." "Myra," Travis said, never breaking his chant. "Now the blood." Myra stepped forward, raising the knife she had taken from her pack. She looked at Lena one last time, her eyes filled with something that might have been love or sorrow or simply acceptance. "I'm sorry," she said, "for everything." "Don't," Lena whispered. "Please, there has to be another way." "There isn't, we both know that." Myra cut her palm, letting her blood flow onto the stone. The moment it touched the carved surface, the chamber erupted with light, not the red of the Howler's eyes, but white, pure, holy. The light of sacrifice, of willing death, of total giving. The Howler screamed. It was a sound like the end of the world, like the breaking of mountains, like the death of stars. The creature thrashed, its forms flickering, its antlers cracking, its eyes dimming. "No," it shrieked. "This is not permitted, this is not possible." "It is done," Travis said, his voice rising above the howl. "The pact is ended, the blood is reclaimed, the Howler dies." The stone exploded. The blast threw them all back, Lena slamming into the wall, her consciousness fading. She saw Myra falling, her body limp, her blood still flowing. She saw Travis, his body engulfed in white fire, burning like a torch. She saw Daryl, thrown against the bone pillar, his head striking stone with a sound like a melon dropping. And she saw the Howler. It was dying. The explosion had torn it apart, shredded its flesh, cracked its antlers, dimmed its eyes. But it was not dead. Not yet. It was crawling toward her, dragging its broken body, its burning eyes fixed on her face. "You," it whispered, "the watcher, the believer, you will remember me, you will fear me, you will tell my story, and in the telling I will live." "No," Lena gasped, crawling away, her body broken, her mind fading. "You die here, you end here." "I never end, I never die, I am the Howling Dark, I am the hunger, I am." The ceiling collapsed. Tons of rock, loosened by the explosion, by the centuries of erosion, by the creature's own thrashing, fell from above. They buried the Howler, buried the chamber, buried everything in a cascade of destruction that seemed to go on forever. Lena curled into a ball, protecting her head, waiting for the end. But the end didn't come. When the rumbling stopped, when the dust settled, she found herself in a pocket of space, surrounded by rock but alive, breathing, impossibly spared. She crawled toward the light. A crack in the rubble, a sliver of dawn, the promise of escape. She pulled herself through inch by inch, her body screaming in agony. She emerged onto the mountainside, the sun rising, the forest quiet. Behind her, the tunnel was sealed, buried, the howler trapped beneath tons of stone. She looked back once at the mound of rock that marked the creature's grave. She whispered a prayer, or a curse, or simply a farewell. Then she turned and walked away, down the mountain, toward the road, toward survival. She didn't know if the others were alive, didn't know if the howler was truly dead, didn't know if she had won or simply delayed the inevitable. But she was alive. That was something, that was enough. For now, Lena walked for 6 hours before she found the road. She was delirious by then, her body running on adrenaline and shock, her mind cycling through memories she couldn't distinguish from hallucinations. She remembered the explosion, the collapse, the howler's final words. She remembered Myra's blood on the stone, Travis's body burning, Daryl's head striking the pillar. She remembered the eye, the burning eye staring at her from beneath the rubble, promising that this wasn't over. The road appeared like a miracle, a strip of asphalt cutting through the forest, leading to civilization, to safety, to help. She collapsed on the shoulder, her body finally giving out, and lay there until a passing truck saw her and stopped. The driver was an old man, kind-faced, who helped her into the cab and wrapped her in a blanket. "What happened to you?" he asked, his voice gentle. "Hiking accident," she managed. "Fell cave-in." "You need a hospital." "Yes." He drove her to Harrison, to the nearest medical facility, where doctors treated her injuries: broken ribs, concussion, multiple lacerations, exposure, dehydration. They asked questions and she answered with lies. A hiking accident. She'd gotten separated from her group. She didn't know where they were. The search teams went out. They found the site, eventually, the mound of rubble that marked the collapsed cavern. But they didn't find the entrance, didn't locate the tunnels, didn't discover the chamber of bones. The howler's lair remained hidden, buried, waiting. They found Travis's truck 3 days later, abandoned at the trailhead. They found the campsite, the gear, the signs of a struggle. But they didn't find the bodies. Not Jace's, not Travis's, not Daryl's, not Myra's. Lena knew they wouldn't. The howler had taken them, consumed them, made them part of its eternal hunger. Or the collapse had buried them, crushed them, turned them to dust. Either way, they were gone. She was the only survivor. The questions continued. Police, FBI, journalists, cryptid enthusiasts. Everyone wanted to know what had happened in those woods, what had killed 4 people and left 1 broken. Lena told them the same story. A hiking accident, a cave-in, her escape, her survival. She didn't mention the howler, didn't mention the pact, the ritual, the sacrifice, didn't mention Myra's blood on the stone. She kept Travis's journal, though, hidden in her hospital bag, smuggled past the authorities, a secret she shared with no one. In its pages, she found the truth of what they had faced, the history of the creature, the legacy of the Boone family. And she found the final entry, written in Travis's hand just before they entered the tunnels. "If you're reading this, I'm dead. If I'm dead, the howler is likely still alive. The ritual may have weakened it, may have buried it, but it won't kill it. Nothing kills it. It sleeps, it waits, it remembers. It will emerge again, sooner or later, and it will hunt again. To whoever finds this, keep the journal, study it, learn from it. And when the howler wakes, when it emerges from the rubble, when it begins to hunt again, be ready. The creature can be bound, can be contained, can be delayed, but it cannot be destroyed, not by any means my family has discovered. Perhaps you will find what we could not. Perhaps you will succeed where generations of boons have failed. Perhaps you will be the one to finally end the Howling Dark. Or perhaps you will simply become its next victim. Either way, the choice is yours. Good luck. Lena read those words 100 times in the months that followed. She read them as her body healed, as her mind recovered, as she tried to rebuild a life from the wreckage of the expedition. She moved to a small town in Oregon, far from the Ozarks, far from the memories. She found work as a biology tutor, helping high school students prepare for exams. She went to therapy, processing the trauma, the guilt, the grief. She didn't drink. That was the one victory she could claim, the one promise she kept to herself. 5 years sober, then 6, then 7. The bourbon never touched her lips, the temptation never overcame her will. But she dreamed. Every night she dreamed. Of the howler, of its burning eyes, of its endless hunger, of Myra bleeding on the stone, of the collapse, the darkness, the eyes staring at her from beneath the rubble. And sometimes in the dreams she heard the howl, rising from the depths, from the earth, from the place where the creature waited. It was calling to her, she knew, marking her, claiming her. She had survived, but she had not escaped. The howler knew her face. The howler remembered her scent. The howler would find her eventually. All she could do was wait. The call came 7 years after the expedition. Lena was in her office grading papers when her phone rang. An unknown number, Arkansas area code. She almost didn't answer. She had cut ties with that part of her life, had moved on, had tried to forget. But something made her pick up. Some instinct, some premonition, some recognition of the inevitable. Lena Carter. Speaking. This is Sheriff Dan Morrison of Newton County, Arkansas. I'm calling about an incident you might be interested in. Lena felt ice in her veins. What kind of incident? Hiker went missing 3 days ago. Trail name's Clearwater Ridge, same area where you had your accident 7 years ago. I see. We found his gear. Backpack, camera, water bottle, but no body, no blood, no sign of struggle, just this. There was a pause, then the sound of a file being transferred. Lena's phone buzzed, indicating a video attachment. I'm sending you the last recording from his camera. It's unusual. I looked into your file, Dr. Carter. I know about your history, your research, the Patterson footage. I thought you might be able to explain this. Lena opened the video with trembling hands. It was dark, filmed at night, the image grainy with low light. She could see trees, undergrowth, the typical view of a hiker walking through woods. The audio was clear, though, the sound of footsteps, of breathing, of the forest at night. Then the howl. It was the same sound she remembered from the Ozarks, the same terrible, impossible howl that had haunted her dreams for 7 years. Rising and falling, almost like language, like words spoken in a voice that had never been human. The camera swung around, the hiker turning toward the sound. The image stabilized and Lena saw it. In the trees, standing on a branch 50 feet up, was a shape. Dark fur, twisted antlers, eyes like dying embers. It was smaller than she remembered, weaker but unmistakable. The howler. It had escaped. The collapse hadn't killed it. The ritual hadn't destroyed it. It had survived, buried under tons of rock, and now it was free, hunting again. The video continued. The creature dropped from the branch, landing silently on the forest floor. It moved toward the hiker, its gait strange, wrong, like an animal trying to walk on 2 legs and failing. The hiker ran. The camera shook, bounced, showed glimpses of trees and ground and sky. Behind, the howler followed, not running but somehow keeping pace, its howl rising and falling with something that might have been laughter. The video ended abruptly. The last frame showed the howler's face, filling the screen, its burning eyes staring directly into the lens, staring directly at Lena. Staring directly at her. Dr. Carter, Sheriff Morrison's voice brought her back to the present. Did you see it? Do you know what that is? Lena took a deep breath, her mind racing. She could lie, could tell him it was a bear, a trick of the light, a hoax, could hang up, change her number, move to another country. But she saw the eye, saw it staring at her from the screen. The Howler knew she was watching. The Howler remembered her. "It's real," she said, her voice steady despite the terror in her heart. "What you saw is real, and it's not the only one. There are more of them all over the world. Ancient things, old things, things that hunt us from the shadows." "What is it?" "It's called the Howler. It's been in those woods for centuries. It made a pact with an ancestor of one of my colleagues, blood for peace, sacrifices to keep it quiet. And now the pact is broken. The sacrifices have stopped. It's hunting again." Silence on the line. "Then what do we do?" "Get people out of those woods, evacuate the area, seal the trails. And then wait for it to sleep again, or find someone else to feed it." "That's not an acceptable answer." "It's the only answer I have." Another pause. "Dr. Carter, I'm going to be honest with you. I've had 3 more reports in the last week. Hikers hearing howling at night, livestock mutilated, a farmer who swears something was watching him from his tree line. Whatever this thing is, it's not staying in the woods, it's coming closer." "I know. Can you help us? Can you stop it?" Lena thought of Myra, of the blood on the stone, of the sacrifice that hadn't been enough. She thought of Travis, burning in white fire. She thought of Jace, broken against the wall. "I don't know," she said, "but I can try." She returned to Arkansas 2 days later, carrying Travis's journal, her memories, and a determination she hadn't felt in years. Sheriff Morrison met her at the airport, a solid man in his 50s with kind eyes and a jaw set with resolve. He drove her to the station, showed her the evidence they'd collected, introduced her to the team he'd assembled. "This is Deputy Sarah Chen," he said, indicating a young woman with sharp features and serious eyes. "She's been handling the disappearances. And this is Dr. Robert Ellis, wildlife biologist from the State University." Ellis was in his 60s, white-haired, with the look of a man who had seen too much to be surprised by anything. "Dr. Carter," he said, shaking her hand, "I've read your work, the Patterson analysis, before. Before I was discredited, yes. I thought you were right about Patterson. I told my colleagues so, though they didn't listen." "Thank you." "Don't thank me yet, we have a problem." They sat in the conference room, the evidence spread across the table. Photos of the missing hiker, last known locations, search grids, equipment found. And the video played on a loop, the Howler's burning eyes staring from the screen. "I've seen this before," Ellis said. "Not this specific creature, but things like it. In my 40 years of field work, I've encountered 3 cryptids, verified, documented, real. Each one was ancient, intelligent, and utterly alien in its thinking." "You believe," Lena said. "I believe in what I can observe, and I observe that this thing is not a bear, not a wolf, not any known animal, it's something else. Something evil," Deputy Chen added, her voice quiet. "I don't know about evil," Ellis said, "but it's certainly dangerous, and it's certainly hunting. The question," Sheriff Morrison said, "is what we do about it." Lena opened Travis's journal, turned to the pages describing the ritual, the pact, the Boone bloodline. "There's a way to bind it," she said. "A ritual involving blood sacrifice. It was done before, generations ago, and it worked for a while." "Human sacrifice?" Chen asked, horrified. "Not necessarily. The original pact used animal sacrifices. Deer, cattle, whatever was available. It kept the creature quiet, kept it from hunting humans. But over time it grew stronger, demanded more. Eventually, the Boone family was feeding it people." "That's monstrous." "It was survival. The creature doesn't negotiate, it hungers, it feeds. The only choice is what it feeds on. So we start feeding it animals again, Morrison asked. "Restart the pact." "That might work temporarily, but it won't last. The creature is ancient, patient. It will wait until we get complacent, until the sacrifices stop, until it's hungry enough to break free. Then it will hunt again." "What's the alternative?" Lena met his eyes. "We kill it." "You just said it couldn't be killed." Travis's family couldn't kill it. Generations of Boones couldn't kill it. But they never had modern weapons, modern technology, modern understanding. They were working with folklore and desperation. "We have science. We have firepower. We have a chance." "A chance," Ellis repeated, "not a guarantee." "Nothing is guaranteed, but doing nothing is guaranteed to fail. More people will die, the creature will grow stronger. Eventually it won't be satisfied with the woods, it will come into town, into cities." "You're talking about a war," Morrison said, "against something we barely understand." "I'm talking about survival, against something that wants to eat us." They sat in silence, the video playing silently on the screen, the Howler's eyes watching them from 7 years in the past. "All right," Morrison said finally. "We'll try it your way, but we do it by the book. No vigilantes, no cowboy tactics. We plan, we prepare, we execute. If there's a chance to kill this thing, we take it, but we do it right." "Agreed," Lena said. "When do we start?" "Tonight it hunts at night, so do we." They set the trap in a clearing 3 miles from the last known location of the Howler. Ellis had chosen the site based on his analysis of the creature's movement patterns, its hunting routes, its territorial markers. "It's territorial," he explained, showing them his maps. "It establishes boundaries, marks them with scent and sound, defends them against intruders. This clearing is at the center of its current range. It's the place where it's most likely to be, most likely to hunt, most likely to defend." "So we bait it," Morrison said, "draw it in." "Exactly." The bait was Deputy Chen, volunteered despite Lena's objections. She was young, healthy, would put up a fight, everything the Howler liked in its prey. She wore a wire, carried a radio, had her service weapon loaded with special ammunition Ellis had designed based on Travis's journal. "Iron rounds," he explained. "Meteoric iron, forged according to the Boone specifications. If anything can hurt this thing, it's this." Lena wasn't convinced, but she kept her doubts to herself. She had seen the Howler shrug off bullets, seen it heal from wounds that should have killed it. But maybe concentrated firepower, combined with the right ammunition, combined with a trap. It was worth a try. They set up in the tree line, concealed in blinds built from branches and camouflage netting. Lena was with Morrison and Ellis, their rifles loaded with the iron rounds. Chen was in the clearing, pretending to set up camp, her movements designed to attract attention. They waited. Hours passed. The sun set, the moon rose, the forest filled with the sounds of nocturnal animals, but no howl, no sign of the creature. "Maybe it knows," Morrison whispered. "Maybe it can sense the trap." "It's smart," Lena agreed. "But it's also hungry. The pact has been broken for 7 years. It's been feeding on whatever it can catch, hikers, hunters, lost pets. But it's not enough. It wants more. So we wait. Another hour, then another. Chen was starting to show signs of fatigue, her movements slowing, her vigilance fading. Lena watched her through binoculars, willing her to stay alert, to stay alive. Then the howl came. It was distant from the east but clear. The same terrible sound Lena remembered, rising and falling almost like language. "It's coming," she whispered. "Positions," Morrison ordered. "Weapons ready." They waited, watching the tree line, watching Chen in the clearing, watching the darkness between the trees. The creature appeared without warning. One moment the tree line was empty, the next it was there. Black fur, twisted antlers, burning eyes. It stood at the edge of the clearing, watching Chen, studying her, learning her. Chen saw it, Her hand moved toward her weapon slowly, carefully. "I see it," she whispered into the radio. "At 12 o'clock, 50 yards. "Hold position," Morrison ordered. "Wait for my signal." The howler moved into the clearing, its gait strange, wrong. It circled Chen, sniffing the air, its nostrils flaring. It knew something was wrong, Lena realized. It could smell the trap, the weapons, the men in the trees. But it was hungry, so hungry. "Now," Morrison shouted. The night erupted with gunfire. Rifles cracked, muzzle flashes illuminating the clearing, iron rounds striking the creature's body. It shrieked, a sound like metal tearing, and spun toward the tree line. "Keep firing," Ellis yelled. "Don't let it escape." They poured rounds into it, 20, 30, 40 shots. The creature jerked and twisted, black blood spraying, but it didn't fall. It charged, moving with impossible speed, heading directly for Morrison's position. "Scatter," Lena screamed. "Move." They scattered, rolling out of their blinds, running into the trees. The howler crashed through the branches, its antlers tearing, its claws ripping. It caught Morrison, lifting him off the ground, its mouth opening to reveal rows of needle teeth. "No," Lena fired, her shot striking the creature's head, its neck, its shoulders. It dropped Morrison, turned toward her, its burning eyes fixing on her face. "You," it said, and its voice was like wind through dead leaves. "The one who escaped, the one who lived, I remember you." "I remember you too," Lena said, her rifle empty, her hands shaking. "And this time I'm going to kill you." She triggered the detonator. The explosives Ellis had placed around the clearing erupted simultaneously, tons of rock and earth cascading down from the ridge above. The howler had time to scream once before the avalanche buried it, tons of stone crushing its body, pinning it to the earth. Lena stood in the dust and darkness, listening. The howler was silent, buried, crushed. "Is it dead?" Chen asked, emerging from her hiding place, her face pale. "Nothing kills it," Lena said, echoing Travis's words. "But it's trapped, contained, that's enough." They dug Morrison out of the rubble, alive but badly injured, his leg crushed. They called for extraction, for medical help, for the authorities to seal the area. And they waited, watching the mound of rock where the howler was buried, waiting for movement, for sound, for any sign that it was still alive. None came. But Lena knew. She knew that it was still down there, still alive, still waiting. The avalanche hadn't killed it. Nothing would kill it. It was eternal, ancient, patient. It would wait, and someday the rock would shift or erode or be moved by curious hands, and it would emerge again, hungry, remembering. Hunting. All she could do was hope that she was long dead before that day came. 3 years passed. Lena Carter lived in Portland now, working as a freelance editor for scientific journals, never venturing into the woods, never going out after dark, never forgetting the burning eyes that haunted her dreams. She had tried therapy, medication, meditation. Nothing helped. The howler was always there, waiting in the dark corners of her mind. The official story was that a bear had attacked Sheriff Morrison's team, that the explosives had been necessary to drive it off, that the creature was dead or driven away. The public believed it because they wanted to believe. They needed to believe that the world was safe, that monsters weren't real, that the darkness held no terrors. But Lena knew, and she knew that the howler knew too. It was still out there, buried under tons of rock, waiting for the mountain to shift, for the earth to move, for the moment when it could emerge again. She received the call on a Tuesday morning, the rain beating against her window, the gray light of Oregon winter filling her apartment. The number was unknown, the area code from Arkansas. "Dr. Carter." She recognized the voice. Deputy Sarah Chen, now Sheriff Chen, promoted after Morrison's retirement. "What is it?" "It's back." Lena closed her eyes, feeling the world tilt beneath her. "Where?" "Same area, Clearwater Ridge. A group of hikers reported hearing howling 3 nights ago. Last night, one of them didn't come back to camp. We found his gear this morning. Blood on the trail and something else." "What?" "A message carved into a tree. I remember you." Lena felt ice in her veins. "It's not possible. We buried it. Tons of rock. It couldn't have escaped." "Apparently it did, or it was never buried, or there's another one." "Another one." Dr. Ellis had a theory before he died. He thought these creatures might be connected, a species or a family or manifestations of something larger. If there's one howler, there might be others. "Where's it now?" "We don't know. It could be anywhere in those woods. Could be watching us right now." Lena thought of Portland, of her safe apartment, of the life she'd built from the wreckage. She thought of the howler, emerging from the earth, hunting again, remembering her face. "I can't help you," she said. "I can't go back there." "We have 17 people missing, Dr. Carter. 17, and the number keeps growing. Every night another disappearance, another family destroyed, another life ended." "I know. You're the only one who's faced this thing and lived, the only one who understands it. We need you." "I can't." "Then they'll die, all of them, and the howler will keep hunting, keep growing stronger, keep spreading. Is that what you want?" Lena thought of Myra, of her sacrifice, of the blood on the stone. She thought of Travis, burning in white fire. She thought of Jace, broken against the wall. "I'll come," she said, "but I need resources, weapons, personnel, a plan." "You'll have everything. And I need something else. Access to Travis Boone's research. Everything his family collected, every journal, every record, every piece of folklore." "It's yours." "Then I'll be there tomorrow." She hung up, staring at the rain on her window. She had known this day would come, had prepared for it, dreaded it, accepted it. The howler was patient. The howler was eternal. And the howler remembered. She was going back to the Ozarks, back to the nightmare, back to the Howling Dark. The research facility was hidden in the mountains of North Carolina, a converted observatory that now served as the headquarters for something called the Ellis Institute. Dr. Robert Ellis had founded it before his death, using his retirement savings and the support of wealthy donors who believed in cryptids. Lena had never been here before. She had corresponded with Ellis, had sent him copies of Travis's journal, had discussed theories and strategies. But she had never seen the facility, never met the team, never understood the scope of what he had built. It was impressive. State-of-the-art equipment, a library of folklore and cryptid research, a team of scientists and hunters and believers who had dedicated their lives to understanding the darkness. Dr. Carter. The director was a woman named Dr. Elena Vargas, 60 years old, sharp-eyed, with the energy of someone half her age. "We've been expecting you. You know why I'm here. The howler has returned. Yes, we've been tracking the reports from Arkansas. 17 confirmed kills in 3 weeks. The creature is escalating." "Why?" "We think," Vargas hesitated, "we think it remembers you. We think it's hunting specifically to draw you out." "That's insane." "Is it? The howler is intelligent, ancient, patient. It was trapped, buried, imprisoned, and then you escaped. You survived. You returned with weapons and explosives and nearly killed it." "Nearly." "Yes, and now it's free, and it's angry, and it wants you." Lena felt the old fear, the paranoia, the certainty that she was being watched, hunted, marked. "So what do we do?" "We finish what you started. We kill it for good." "How?" Vargas led her to a vault, heavy steel, secured with biometric locks. Inside were weapons. Not guns, not explosives, but something else. Blades forged from meteoric iron. Spears with heads carved from obsidian. Symbols etched in silver, patterns that seemed to move when viewed from the corner of the eye. "The old ways," Vargas said. "The ways that worked before guns, before explosives, before modern warfare." "Those didn't work either. Generations of Boons tried to kill it. They failed. They failed because they didn't understand what it was, but we do. Thanks to you, thanks to Travis's journal, thanks to Dr. Ellis's research, we know the Howler's nature now, its origin, its weakness. What weakness? Vargas picked up a blade, turned it in the light. It's not flesh and blood, not entirely. It's a manifestation, an idea given form. The Howler exists because people believe in it, because they fear it, because they tell stories about it around campfires. You're saying it's a tulpa, a thought form. Something like that. It feeds on belief, on fear, on the stories humans tell about it. The more we fear it, the stronger it becomes. The more we believe, the more real it is. Then how do we kill it? By making people stop believing, by erasing the stories, by destroying the evidence. That's impossible. No, it's difficult. It requires sacrifice, but it's not impossible. Vargas set down the blade, turned to face Lena fully. We need you to be bait, to draw it out, to confront it, to let it kill you. What? Hear me out. If you die, if you're killed by the Howler in a public way, witnessed by many people, documented beyond doubt, the story changes. It becomes a tragedy, a cautionary tale, but not a mystery. The Howler becomes real, yes, but also mortal, killable. It becomes something that can be defeated. And that kills it. No, but it weakens it, makes it vulnerable. And then we strike with everything we have. The iron, the fire, the sacred symbols. While it's weak, while it's confused, while it's trying to understand its changed nature. You want me to die? I want you to sacrifice yourself, to save countless others, to end this thing once and for all. Lena thought of Myra, of her sacrifice, of the blood on the stone. She had been willing to die then, in that cavern, if it meant stopping the Howler. Was this any different? What if it doesn't work? Then we try something else, but we have to try. The alternative is to wait, to hide, to let it keep hunting. And that means more death, more suffering, more victims. Lena looked at the weapons, the symbols, the tools of ancient warfare. She thought of the Howler, of its burning eyes, of its endless hunger. When do we start? Tomorrow. Then let's begin. The plan was simple in concept, complex in execution. They would lure the Howler to a populated area, a festival or gathering where hundreds of people would witness the confrontation. Lena would face the creature, would fight it, would allow herself to be killed. The death would be documented, broadcast, shared. The story would change. And then the team would strike. They chose the Ozark Folk Festival in Eureka Springs, a celebration of music and crafts that drew thousands to the town. The Howler had been spotted in the area, had taken victims from the outskirts. It was close. Lena walked the streets alone, unarmed, visible. She was bait and she knew it. Every shadow was a threat, every sound a warning. The Howler was watching. She could feel it. The sun set. The festival continued, music spilling from open windows, crowds moving through the narrow streets. Lena walked to the edge of town, to the forest, to the place where the creature waited. "I'm here," she shouted into the darkness. "I'm here, come and get me." Silence, then slowly the howl. It rose from the trees, from the earth, from everywhere at once. The festival went silent. People turned, listening, confused. Then they saw it. The Howler emerged from the forest, massive, burning, antlers gleaming in the moonlight. It walked on 2 legs, then 4, then something in between. It was larger than before, stronger, fed by 3 years of hunting. "Lena Carter," it said, its voice like wind through dead leaves. "You returned." "I returned," she said, her voice steady despite her terror, "to end you. You cannot end me. I am eternal. I am the Howling Dark. I am." "A story." The Howler paused, its burning eyes dimming slightly. "That's what you are," Lena continued. "A story, a legend, a boogeyman for children, and stories can be rewritten." She raised her voice, addressing the crowd that had gathered, the people filming with their phones, the world watching through social media. This creature is real. It has killed dozens. It is ancient and hungry and evil, but it can be destroyed. It can be ended. Lies, the howler shrieked. I am real, I am eternal, I am. A monster that bleeds. Lena threw the knife Vargas had given her, the meteoric iron blade spinning through the air. It struck the howler in the shoulder, black blood spraying. The creature screamed, a sound of pure agony. It had never been hurt before, never been wounded, never felt pain. The crowd gasped, filming, sharing, witnessing. It can be hurt, Lena shouted. It can be killed. The howler lunged, moving with impossible speed. Its claws caught her, lifted her, held her aloft. She looked into its burning eyes and saw something new there. Fear. You die, it whispered. Yes, Lena smiled, but so do you. The creature's jaws closed around her throat, and the world went dark. The video went viral within hours. Millions of views, shares, comments. The world saw the howler, saw it bleed, saw it kill. The creature became real, undeniable, documented. And then the world saw it die. Vargas's team struck the moment Lena fell. Iron blades, blessed by priests of a dozen traditions, holy water, sacred fire. They poured everything they had into the creature, and it burned. It screamed, thrashing, its form flickering, becoming less real, less substantial. The stories were changing. The belief was shifting. It was no longer an eternal monster, but a mortal creature, and mortal creatures could die. The howler dissolved into shadow, into mist, into memory. It fought to the end, but the end came. For the first time in centuries, perhaps millennia, the Howling Dark was silent. Lena Carter was buried with honors, a hero, a martyr, a legend. Her sacrifice had saved countless lives, had ended an ancient evil, had proven that monsters could be defeated. But in the deep places, in the dark corners of the world, other eyes opened. Other creatures stirred. The howler was not unique. It was not alone. And stories once told are never truly forgotten. Somewhere in a forest older than memory, something howled. And the sound carried across the miles, across the years, across the boundary between life and death. The Howling Dark had ended. But the darkness remained. And it was patient. The memorial service was held in Fayetteville on the anniversary of Lena's death. Scientists, law enforcement, survivors of the howler's attacks, they all came to honor the woman who had sacrificed everything to end the nightmare. Dr. Elena Vargas gave the eulogy, speaking of Lena's courage, her determination, her refusal to give up even when all hope seemed lost. She showed us that monsters can be defeated, Vargas said. That darkness can be dispelled. That one person, willing to pay the ultimate price, can change the world. But not everyone believed the howler was truly gone. In the years following Lena's death, reports continued to filter in from around the world. Strange howling in the forests of Romania, mutilated livestock in the Scottish Highlands, hikers disappearing in the Japanese Alps. Always the same pattern, the spiral arrangement of remains, the impossible tracks, the burning eyes seen in the darkness. The Ellis Institute investigated each report, sending teams to document, to search, to verify. They found evidence sometimes, scratches on trees, unusual scat, thermal signatures that couldn't be explained. But they never found another howler, never confirmed another kill, never proved that the creature had survived or reproduced or spread. Some believed the howler was truly dead, its essence scattered, its power broken. Others believed it had simply gone dormant, waiting for belief to grow again, for fear to return, for the conditions that had created it to recur. And some believed there had never been just one. Maya Chen was 12 years old when she first heard the howl. She was camping with her family in the Ouachita Mountains, far from the Ozarks where her grandmother Sarah had faced the creature. It was summer, warm, the fire crackling as her father told stories about her grandmother's bravery. "She was the bravest woman I ever knew," he said. "She faced a monster, looked it in the eye, and didn't blink." "Was it real?" Maya asked. "The Howler?" "Some people think so. Some people think it's just a story." "What do you think?" He hesitated, looking into the fire. "I think the world is bigger and stranger than we know. I think there are things out there that we don't understand. And I think your grandmother believed, and that belief gave her the strength to face her fears." That's when they heard it, the howl. It rose from the forest, distant but clear, the same sound described in every account of the Howler. Maya felt ice in her veins, felt her heart hammering, felt the primitive terror that her ancestors had known. Inside, her father said, his voice tight, "Now." They ran for the RV, her mother scooping up her younger brother, her father grabbing the shotgun from its rack. They slammed the door, locked it, turned on every light. The howl came again, closer this time, then again closer still. "It's not possible," her father whispered. "The Howler is dead. Lena Carter killed it." "Maybe this is a different one," Maya said, her voice shaking. They sat in silence, waiting, listening. The howling continued for an hour, moving around the camp, never approaching, never attacking. Then it stopped abruptly, and the silence was worse than the sound. In the morning they found the tracks, massive, three-toed, circling the camp, and on the windshield of the RV, scratched into the glass, 3 words, "I remember you." Maya's father called the Ellis Institute that day. They came, they investigated, they found evidence that couldn't be explained. But they didn't find the creature. It had vanished, as it always did, back into the dark places from which it came. Maya grew up with that memory, with the certainty that monsters were real, that darkness waited, that the Howler still hunted. She studied biology in college, then cryptozoology at the Ellis Institute. She became a hunter, a researcher, a guardian. And she waited. 20 years after Lena's death, the Ellis Institute detected a pattern. Howling reports were increasing worldwide, not just in the Ozarks but everywhere, North America, Europe, Asia, South America. Always in remote areas, always with the same signature, always escalating. "It's breeding," Dr. Vargas said, now in her 80s but still sharp. "Or multiplying, or awakening. Whatever these creatures are, they're becoming more active." "Why now?" Maya asked. She was 32 now, a senior researcher leading her own team. "Because we forgot. Because the fear faded. Because Lena's sacrifice became history instead of warning. We stopped believing, and without belief, the binding weakens. So we need to believe again. We need to remember. We need to tell the stories. We need to keep the vigil." Maya thought of her grandmother, of the night in the Wachitas, of the fear that had shaped her life. She thought of Lena Carter, who had given everything to stop one monster, never knowing that there were others, that the darkness was deeper and older than anyone had imagined. "What do we do?" she asked. "We hunt," Vargas said. "We find them wherever they are. We learn their weaknesses, and we end them one by one until the darkness is empty. And if we can't, then we keep trying, because the alternative is to let them win, to let them hunt, to let them consume everything we love." Maya looked out the window, at the forest that surrounded the Institute, at the darkness gathering between the trees. She knew the Howler was out there, knew it was watching, knew it remembered her family, her blood, her heritage. "Then let's begin," she said. The war lasted 30 years. Maya Chen became the greatest hunter of her generation, tracking howlers across 6 continents, learning their patterns, discovering their weaknesses. She developed new weapons, new strategies, new ways of fighting creatures that shouldn't exist. She lost friends, dozens of them over the decades, to claws and teeth and burning eyes. She lost lovers, colleagues, students. She lost pieces of herself, her left hand to a howler's bite, her right eye to an ambush, her innocence to the things she had seen. But she kept fighting, because the alternative was to let the darkness win. By the time she was 60, the howlers were rare, not extinct. The Institute believed that was impossible, but contained. Driven back to their deep places, their hidden lairs, their ancient dens, the world was safer, though it would never be safe. Maya retired to a cabin in the Ozarks, near where it had all begun. She wrote her memoirs, trained her successors, kept her weapons close. She knew that someday the howlers would return. They always did. But she also knew that humanity would be ready, that the vigil would continue, that as long as there were people willing to stand against the darkness could never truly win. On her 70th birthday, she sat by her fire, listening to the wind in the trees. The sun had set, the stars had emerged, the night was deep and dark. And then she heard it, the howl. It was distant, faint, almost imaginary, but she knew it was real. She knew it was out there, watching, waiting, remembering. Maya smiled. She picked up her rifle, checked the iron rounds, stepped out onto her porch. "Come on, then," she whispered to the darkness. "Let's finish this." The howling continued, rising and falling, almost like laughter. Then it stopped and the forest was silent. Maya waited all night, but the creature never appeared. It was toying with her, she knew, playing its ancient game, waiting for her to weaken, to falter, to fail. She wouldn't. She would stand vigil until her dying day, and then her successors would stand and theirs after them. The war would never end, but neither would the resistance. In the dark places, the howlers waited. In the deep woods, the ancient hunger slept. But in the light, in the fire, in the hearts of those who remembered, the guardians stood watch. And as long as they stood, the darkness would never fully descend. The Howling Dark was eternal. But so was the light. Bigfoot vs. The Skinwalker. The Navajo elder's name was Hosteen Blackhorse, and he had walked the desert for 87 years without fear until the morning he woke to find his sheep slaughtered. Not killed, slaughtered. Their throats opened with surgical precision, their organs arranged in patterns that spiraled outward from the center of the corral like ripples in blood. The liver, heart, and kidneys of each animal had been positioned at cardinal points, connected by lines of gall-bladder bile that caught the dawn light and seemed to glow with an inner phosphorescence. Hosteen had seen ritual work before. He had been a medicine man, a hatali, before age and arthritis had forced him to pass his knowledge to younger hands. He recognized the patterns, knew the songs they represented, understood the dark intent behind the careful arrangement. This was no coyote kill, no predator's messy feeding. This was ceremony. This was invocation. He stood at the edge of the corral, his ancient legs trembling not from age but from the violation before him. The sheep had been alive when the cutting began. He could tell by the blood spatter, by the position of the limbs, by the expression frozen on their faces. They had been made to watch each other die. One by one, their terror feeding whatever had done this, their pain a prayer to something older than the dying, older than the land itself. "Ye Naldlusha," he whispered, the words tasting like ash on his tongue. "The Skinwalker. The shape-shifting witch that walked between worlds, that wore the skins of the dead, that had learned the forbidden songs and paid the price in humanity. He had thought they were stories. He had thought the warnings were for children, to keep them from wandering at night. Now he knew better. The ranger found him 3 hours later, still standing at the corral's edge, his weathered face turned toward the mountains where the sun caught the red rock and made it bleed. The ranger was young, fresh from the academy, his uniform still creased from the packaging, his eyes wide with the shock of his first real crime scene. "Sir," the ranger said, approaching carefully, "Mr. Blackhorse, I'm Ranger David Chen. Someone called about an incident with your livestock." Hosteen didn't turn. He kept his eyes on the mountains, on the place where the red rock met the blue sky. "It woke up," he said, his voice barely audible, carried away by the desert wind. "They woke it up. the Ye Nald Lucia, and now it hunts for the other one. Sir, the ranger stepped closer, his hand unconsciously moving toward his sidearm. I don't understand. What woke up? Who's hunting for what? Hosteen finally turned and the ranger stepped back involuntarily. The old man's eyes were different now. The pupils dilated to black pools that seemed to see through flesh, through bone, through the veil between worlds. It comes, Hosteen said. The skin stealer, the walker between. It comes and it brings war, not war for you, not war for me. War for the forest, war for the ancient one. He reached out with a hand that shook with more than age, grasping the ranger's wrist with surprising strength. Listen to me, young one. You must leave this place. Take your family, your friends, anyone you love, and run. Run east toward the cities, toward the concrete where the old ones cannot walk. Because what comes now is not human. What comes now is not animal. What comes now is the reason your people tell stories about the dark. The ranger tried to pull away, but Hosteen's grip was iron. 2 days ago, a group of white people came to the reservation. Scientists, they said, looking for monsters. They went into the forest with cameras and recording devices, and they made noise. They made so much noise, and the noise woke what sleeps. Dr. Carter's team, the ranger said, recognition dawning. The cryptozoologists, they're camped up near the rim studying. They study death, Hosteen interrupted. They study their own deaths, though they do not know it yet. The Ye Nald Lucia does not suffer intruders. The Ye Nald Lucia collects them. And now that it wakes, now that it hungers, it will not stop until it has what it wants. What does it want? The ranger asked, his fear beginning to outweigh his skepticism. Hosteen released his grip and pointed toward the mountains, toward the deep forest where the ponderosa pines grew so thick that sunlight never reached the ground. It wants the other one, he said. The tall one, the red-haired giant, the one your scientists call Sasquatch, the one my people call other things, names that should not be spoken aloud. Bigfoot, the ranger couldn't keep the disbelief from his voice. You're saying a skinwalker is hunting Bigfoot? I am saying war is coming, Hosteen said. War between the oldest powers of this land. And you, young ranger, are standing in the battlefield. He turned back to his sheep, to the ritual slaughter that decorated his corral. I tried to stop it. Last night I sang the protection songs. I laid the corn pollen. I did everything my grandfather taught me to keep the Ye Nald Lucia away. But it laughed at me. It stood outside my window and laughed, and I saw its face. The ranger felt ice form in his stomach. What did it look like? It wore my brother's face, Hosteen said softly. My brother who died 10 years ago. It wore his skin, his smile, his voice. It called me by the name only he knew. And then it killed my sheep to show me that nothing can stop it. Nothing can protect me. The Ye Nald Lucia has grown strong, stronger than it should be. Strong enough to challenge. He stopped, his head cocking as if listening to something the ranger couldn't hear. It comes now, he whispered, to finish what it started, to silence the witness. The ranger spun, his hand on his gun, scanning the tree line. He saw nothing but shadows and wind and the play of light through leaves. There's nothing there, he said. Mr. Blackhorse, I think we need to get you to a hospital. You're in shock. You're not making sense. It stands behind the juniper, Hosteen said, not turning around. The one with the split trunk. It has been watching us for 10 minutes. It waits for you to leave so it can take me. But you will not leave, will you, young ranger? You are brave. You are foolish. You are already dead. The ranger looked at the juniper with the split trunk 40 yards away. He saw nothing, just shadows, just wind. And then the shadows moved. It emerged slowly, as if testing the air, as if savoring the fear it had cultivated. At first the ranger thought it was a coyote, mangy, emaciated, its fur patchy and diseased. But it stood on its hind legs. It moved with a fluid grace that was utterly inhuman, its joints bending backward, its head rotating to fix him with eyes that held intelligence, malice, and something far worse, amusement. Run, Hosteen said. The ranger didn't run. He drew his weapon, pointing it at the thing that stood on two legs and wore a coyote's skin. "Identify yourself," he shouted, his voice cracking. "Get on the ground now." The thing laughed. It was a wet sound, gurgling as if spoken through a throat full of blood, and then it moved. The ranger never saw it cross the distance. One moment it was by the juniper, the next it was on him, its claws too long, too curved, dripping with black fluid, raking across his chest. He fired 3 shots that went wild as he fell, and then he was on his back staring up at a face that was no longer entirely coyote. It was changing. Even as he watched, even as his blood pumped out onto the desert sand, the thing's face was shifting, the muzzle shortening, the fur receding, the eyes changing from yellow to brown to blue. It was becoming human, becoming familiar, becoming. "No," the ranger whispered, recognition cutting through the pain. The thing smiled with teeth that were still too sharp, still too numerous. "Yes," it said, and the voice was the ranger's own voice, his own voice reflected back at him with hungry amusement. "I wear you now. I wear your face, your hands, your life." It reached down, and the ranger felt claws enter his throat, felt his windpipe close, felt the world fade to black. The last thing he saw was his own face smiling down at him, his own eyes filled with ancient hunger. Hosteen Blackhorse watched it happen. He didn't run, didn't try to save the ranger, didn't even pray. He simply watched, his ancient face resigned as the Yi Naldlusha fed. When it was done, when the ranger's body stopped twitching and the thing began to skin its prey with practiced efficiency, Hosteen spoke. "You cannot wear me," he said. "I am too old, my skin is leather, it would not fit." The thing paused, the ranger's face already hanging loose from its skull, dripping red onto the sand. "I do not want you, old man," it said, its voice now a mix of coyote growl and human speech. "I want what you know. I want the location of the red one, the tall one, the ancient." "I will not tell you." "You will," the thing said. It gestured toward the dead sheep, toward the ritual slaughter. "I have learned new songs, old man, songs from far away, from people who knew power before your ancestors crawled from the mud. I can make you talk. I can make you sing. I can make you beg for death." Hosteen smiled, the first expression he had shown since the morning began. "You can try," he said, "but I am Hosteen Blackhorse. I am Hatali. I have walked with the D in Dine, and I know secrets that would burn you, skin stealer. I know names that would unravel you." He reached into his pocket and withdrew a small leather pouch, a jish filled with the tools of his trade: corn pollen, turquoise, white shell, abalone. "I am not defenseless." The thing laughed again, the ranger's face flapping grotesquely as it moved. "You are nothing, old man. Your gods are weak, your songs are dust, and I am hungry." It lunged. Hosteen opened the jish and threw the contents into the air, shouting words in a language older than the Navajo, older than the Anasazi, older than the land itself. The corn pollen caught the sunlight and seemed to ignite, burning with a white fire that made the Yi Naldlusha scream. The thing stumbled back, its stolen face blistering, smoke rising from its fur. What is this?" "The blessing way," Hosteen said, his voice strong despite his age. "The song of creation, the power of life itself turned against you." He kept singing, his voice rising in the ancient chant, his hands weaving patterns in the air. The smoke around the skinwalker thickened, becoming a cloud that obscured its form, that seared its flesh wherever it touched. "This is not over," the thing screamed, its voice now fully coyote, fully animal, the human words barely intelligible through the growls. "I will find the red one. I will wear its skin. I will become what even gods fear." It turned and ran, loping away on 4 legs that moved faster than any natural creature, disappearing into the tree line before the smoke could consume it. Hosteen stopped singing, his energy spent, his ancient heart hammering in his chest. He looked at the ranger's body, at the skin that had been peeled back like a fruit rind, at the empty eyes that stared at the sky. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I should have warned you better. I should have made you understand." He knelt beside the body and began the death chant, the song that would guide the ranger's spirit to the next world, that would protect him from the Yi Naldlucia's influence. But even as he sang, he knew it wouldn't be enough. The skin stealer had tasted this man's soul, had worn his face, had claimed something that could never be returned. When the song was done, Hosteen stood and looked toward the mountains. The war he had predicted was coming. The Yi Naldlucia had grown bold, grown powerful, strong enough to challenge the Ancient Ones. And somewhere in that forest, the red giant slept, unaware that death was hunting it. "Wake up, old friend," Hosteen whispered to the wind. "Wake up and prepare, the enemy comes." Dr. Alina Carter had never believed in monsters. She believed in misidentification, in hoaxes, in the power of suggestion, and the reliability of eyewitness testimony. She had built her career, and destroyed it, on the principle that every legend had a rational explanation, that every sighting could be debunked with enough evidence and critical thinking. She had been wrong. Not about Bigfoot. She still wasn't sure about Bigfoot. The evidence was suggestive but inconclusive, the footprints clever fakes or misidentified bear tracks, the hair samples degraded beyond reliable analysis. She had spent 15 years chasing shadows, following leads to remote forests and mountain ranges, always finding disappointment where others found faith. But she had seen something in the Amazon 3 years ago, something that had destroyed her reputation and nearly taken her life, something that had forced her to reconsider everything she thought she knew about the boundaries between possible and impossible. She didn't talk about the Amazon. Not to her colleagues, not to her family, not even to herself on the long nights when sleep wouldn't come, and the memories pressed against the backs of her eyes. She had retreated into academic respectability, taking a teaching position at a community college, publishing papers on cryptid psychology that were safely abstract, safely theoretical. And then the email had arrived. It came from a man named Marcus Webb, a wealthy tech entrepreneur who had made his fortune in cryptocurrency and lost his mind in the Arizona desert. He claimed to have definitive proof of Sasquatch activity. Thermal imaging, he said. Hair samples with primate DNA. Recordings of vocalizations that couldn't be attributed to any known animal. And he was willing to fund a full expedition, supply the equipment, pay the salaries, if Alina would lead it. She had almost deleted the email. She had almost convinced herself that she was done with cryptids, done with the chase, done with the disappointment. But the funding was substantial, more money than she had seen in her entire career, and the location was specific. Not the Pacific Northwest, where every logging road had a Bigfoot sighting attached to it. Arizona. The mountains above the Navajo reservation. A place where the sightings were rare, the witnesses credible, the evidence unexamined. She had said yes. Now, 3 weeks into the expedition, she was beginning to regret that decision. The team was too large, too arrogant, too convinced of their own invincibility. There was James "Jimmy" Halloway, the tech expert, who had made his fortune in surveillance equipment and believed that cameras were the answer to every mystery. There was Sarah Kim, the skeptic, a science journalist who had joined the team specifically to debunk whatever they found, her cynicism worn like armor. There was Tom Bradley, the hunter, a former Special Forces operator who provided security and sneered at the eggheads, who had never tracked anything more dangerous than a research grant. And there was Marcus Webb himself, the money man, who treated the entire expedition like a safari, like entertainment, like a reality show waiting to happen. They were camped on the edge of the Mogollon Rim, in a clearing that overlooked miles of untouched forest. The equipment was state-of-the-art. Thermal cameras, motion sensors, audio recording gear, drones, satellite uplinks. They had enough technology to find a mouse in a haystack, and they were using it to look for a 9-foot ape. "Tonight's the night," Webb said, his voice carrying across the camp. He was drinking again, the beer cans accumulating around his chair like trophies. "I can feel it. The big guy is out there. I can smell him." "You can smell your own desperation," Sarah Kim muttered, not bothering to hide her contempt. "We've been here 3 weeks, Mr. Webb. We've got hours of footage of squirrels. We've got thermal images of deer. We've got audio of owls. What we don't have is Bigfoot." "Patience, Ms. Kim," Webb said, waving his beer can airily. "These things take time. The creature is elusive, cautious. It knows we're here. It's watching us, waiting to see if we're a threat. It's watching us because we're making so much noise we couldn't sneak up on a deaf elephant," Tom Bradley said, emerging from the tree line with his rifle over his shoulder. "You want to find this thing. Stop talking. Stop moving. Stop being human. That's the only way." "That's why I hired you, Tom," Webb said. "Your tracking skills, your military precision." "You hired me because I know how to survive," Bradley corrected. "And right now I'm telling you that something feels wrong in these woods. I've been in forests all over the world. Afghanistan, Colombia, Borneo. I've tracked Taliban through mountains, FARC through jungles, smugglers through swamps. I know when I'm being watched. I know when I'm being hunted. And right now something is watching us. Something that isn't Bigfoot." Elena looked up from her notes. "What do you mean?" "I mean there's something else out there," Bradley said, his voice dropping to a whisper. "Something that doesn't move right. I've seen tracks. Fresh ones. Two-legged like a man, but the gait is wrong. The stride is too long. The pressure points are in the wrong places. And the smell." He shuddered, an involuntary movement that Elena wouldn't have thought him capable of. "It smells like death. Like rot. Like something that should be buried but isn't." "Mountain lion kill," Jimmy Holloway suggested. "They cache their prey. The smell of decay would carry." "Not like this," Bradley said. "This is different. This is wrong. I'm telling you we should pack up and leave, tonight, before whatever it is decides we're prey." "We're not leaving," Webb said, his voice hardening. "I paid for this expedition. I paid for results. And I'm not going back to my investors empty-handed." "Your investors can get their money back," Bradley said. "Or they can get your body in a bag, your choice." The argument continued, but Elena tuned it out. She was watching the tree line, the place where the forest shadows seemed thickest. Bradley was right. Something felt wrong. She had felt it since they arrived, a prickling on the back of her neck, a sense of being observed that she couldn't shake. She had told herself it was paranoia, the legacy of her Amazon experience, the trauma of having her worldview shattered. But now, watching the darkness gather between the pines, she wasn't so sure. It started with the cameras. Jimmy had set up a perimeter of motion-activated cameras, high-end equipment with night vision and thermal imaging capability. At 11:47 p.m., the one on the north edge of the camp, Camera 7, positioned to capture the approach from the densest part of the forest, triggered. Jimmy was asleep in his tent, but the camera sent an alert to his phone, a chirping beep that pulled him from dreams of spreadsheets and stock prices. He checked the feed automatically, his eyes still blurry with sleep, and what he saw made him sit up straight, his heart hammering against his ribs. Heat signature, large, bipedal, moving through the trees with a gait that was almost human but somehow wrong, the arms swinging too long, the steps too heavy. The thermal image showed a massive form, easily 8 feet tall, radiating heat like a furnace, moving with purpose toward the camp. "Guys," Jimmy called out, his voice cracking. "Guys, you need to see this." They gathered around his laptop, bleary-eyed and skeptical, expecting another deer or bear. But when they saw the image, even Sarah Kim fell silent. That's not a bear," she whispered. "That's him," Webb breathed, his face flushed with excitement. "That's Bigfoot, the red one, the Arizona Sasquatch." Elena stared at the screen, her scientific mind racing through possibilities. Thermal anomaly, equipment malfunction, hoax. But the image was clear, detailed, showing a form that matched every description she had ever read. Massive, humanoid, covered in heat-radiating fur, moving with a rolling gait that suggested immense strength and weight. "It's coming this way," Bradley said, his hand on his rifle. toward the camp. Don't shoot it, Webb said quickly. For God's sake, don't shoot it. We need it alive. We need proof. I'm not going to shoot it, Bradley said. Not unless it attacks, but I'm not taking chances either. He moved to the edge of the camp, positioning himself behind a tree, his rifle at the ready. The others followed, keeping their distance, their eyes fixed on the forest where the thermal signature had disappeared. It stopped, Jimmy said, checking his phone. Camera 7 lost the signal. It must have stopped moving. Or it's crouching, Bradley said, waiting, watching. They waited 5 minutes, 10. The forest was silent, unnaturally so, the normal night sounds of insects and owls absent. Alina felt the wrongness again, stronger now, a pressure against her chest that made it hard to breathe. Maybe it moved on, Sarah suggested. Maybe it was just passing through. Maybe, Bradley said, but he didn't lower his rifle. It was then that Alina saw it. Not in the forest, but at the edge of the camp near the supply tent. A shape that hadn't been there before, a shadow that moved against the wind. She opened her mouth to shout a warning, but before she could speak, the shadow rose and stood on 2 legs, and she saw it clearly in the moonlight. Not Bigfoot, not the massive red-furred giant from the thermal image. Something else. Something smaller, more hunched, covered in patchy fur that might once have been a coyote's pelt but was now rotting, diseased, hanging in strips from emaciated limbs. It stood like a man, but its joints bent backward, its head hanging at an angle that suggested a broken neck, its eyes, God, its eyes, glowing yellow with a light that came from within. What the hell? Webb whispered. The thing smiled, or tried to. Its muzzle was too long, the teeth too sharp, the expression more snarl than grin. It raised a hand that was more claw than finger and pointed at them, one by one, as if counting, as if choosing. It's not Bigfoot, Alina said, her voice barely audible. It's something else. Shoot it, Webb screamed. Bradley, shoot it. Bradley fired, 3 quick shots that should have dropped any animal, any human. The thing didn't flinch. It didn't bleed. It simply looked at Bradley with those yellow eyes, and then it moved. Not toward them. Away. Into the forest. Disappearing between the trees with a speed that was impossible, leaving only the smell of rot and the echo of something that might have been laughter. What? Sarah said, her voice shaking. What the fuck was that? Bradley lowered his rifle, his hands trembling. I don't know, he said, but I hit it. 3 times center mass. It should be dead. It should be bleeding. There's no blood, Jimmy said, checking the ground where the thing had stood. No tracks, nothing. Check the cameras, Alina said, her mind reasserting control. All of them. I want to know where it came from, where it went, everything. They spent the next hour reviewing footage, checking sensors, searching the perimeter. They found nothing. No heat signatures, no tracks, no evidence that anything had been in their camp except them. The thing, whatever it was, had left no trace. It was a coyote, Sarah said finally, her skepticism reasserting itself. A mangy coyote. The moonlight played tricks, made it look like it was standing up, and Bradley missed, that's all. I didn't miss, Bradley said quietly. I know when I hit something, those shots went home. Then where's the blood? Where's the body? I don't know. They argued until 2 a.m., eventually agreeing to maintain a double watch for the rest of the night. Bradley took first shift, sitting by the fire with his rifle across his knees, staring into the darkness. Alina tried to sleep, but every sound made her start awake. Every shadow seemed to move with purpose. At 3:30 a.m., she gave up and joined Bradley by the fire. You believe me, he said. It wasn't a question. I believe something is out there, Alina said. I don't know what, but that thing. I've seen things before, Tom, things that shouldn't exist, things that science can't explain, and that was one of them. What did you see? Bradley asked. In the Amazon, you never talk about it. Alina stared into the fire, watching the flames dance. I saw something that wore human skin, she said quietly. Something that had been human once, a long time ago, but had become something else. It hunted us, killed 3 of my team before we escaped. And when I tried to tell people, when I tried to get help, they called me crazy, said I was hallucinating from disease or drugs or stress. But you weren't. No, I wasn't, and whatever is out there now, it's like that thing, it's old, it's powerful, and it's hungry. We should leave, Bradley said. In the morning, pack up and go. Webb won't agree. Then we leave without him, you and me. The others can stay if they want, but I'm not dying for someone else's reality show. Alina was about to answer when they heard it. A sound from the edge of the camp, near the ravine where they had set up the portable toilet. A wet sound, a tearing sound, a sound that shouldn't have been there. They moved together, silently, Bradley with his rifle ready, Alina with a flashlight in one hand and a hunting knife in the other. The sound led them to the ravine's edge, to the place where the ground dropped away into darkness. The smell hit them first, copper and bile and something else, something sweet and wrong, and then they saw. Jimmy Halloway hung from a tree branch that extended over the ravine. Not hung by a rope, hung by his own skin. His skin had been removed carefully, completely, peeled away like a costume and stretched over the branch to dry. The body beneath was red and wet, the muscles exposed, the organs missing, the face, God, the face, twisted in an expression of agony that suggested he had been alive for most of it. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was what was done with the skin. It had been arranged, positioned, made into a display. The empty shell of Jimmy Halloway was propped against the tree trunk, sitting in a mockery of life, its arms positioned to point toward the camp. And on the chest, written in what could only be blood, were words in a language Alina didn't recognize. "What does it say?" Bradley whispered. "I don't know," Alina said, her voice shaking, "but I think it's a message." They didn't find Jimmy's organs. They didn't find his killer. They didn't find anything except the skin and the body and the words that no one could read. The cameras showed nothing. Jimmy had walked to the ravine on his own, apparently sleepwalking, and the footage stopped when he reached the tree line. After that, static. 2 minutes of static, and then the image of his skin hanging from the branch. Webb wanted to call the police, the FBI, anyone who would listen. But Alina convinced him to wait, to think, to consider what would happen if they reported a murder that involved a body that had been flayed by something that left no trace. They would be suspects. They would be arrested. The expedition would end, and whatever was hunting them would win. "We stay," she said, her voice harder than she felt. "We find this thing, we stop it, and then we call for help." No one argued. They were past the point of argument. They buried what was left of Jimmy in a shallow grave, marked with rocks, and they waited for dawn. But the thing that had killed Jimmy wasn't done with them. It was only getting started. The second death came 3 hours after dawn, when the forest should have been safe, when the sun should have driven the darkness back into the holes where it lived. But the thing that hunted them didn't fear the sun. It was a creature of shadows, yes, but it had learned to walk in light, to wear the skins of the day as easily as the skins of the night. Sarah Kim was the next to die. She had been arguing with Webb since sunrise, demanding that they leave, that they abandon the expedition and run while they still could. Her skepticism had crumbled in the face of Jimmy's flayed corpse, replaced by a terror that made her shrill, erratic, impossible to reason with. "I'm going," she had announced at 9 a.m., stuffing her pack with supplies. "You can stay and die if you want, but I'm hiking out. There's a fire road 3 miles east. I'll follow it to the highway. I'll flag down a car. I'll do whatever it takes to get away from this nightmare." "You can't go alone," Alina had said. "It's not safe." "It's not safe here," Sarah had screamed, her composure finally breaking. "Jimmy is dead. Something peeled him like a fucking orange and hung his skin on a tree. And you want me to stay. You want me to wait for it to happen to me." "We need to stick together," Bradley had said, his voice calm despite the tension in his shoulders. Whatever this is, it hunts the isolated. It picks us off one by one. If we separate, we're dead. Then come with me, all of you. Let's go right now together while it's still morning. But Webb had refused. He was still convinced that they were close, that the creature, the Bigfoot, the real Bigfoot, was within reach, that one more night, one more carefully planned observation would give them the proof they needed. 24 hours, he had said. Give me 24 hours. If we don't get definitive evidence by tomorrow morning, we leave, all of us, together. Sarah had screamed at him, called him a fool, a murderer, a delusional narcissist who valued fame over lives. And then she had stormed off toward the tree line, her pack on her back, her boots crunching through the pine needles. "Stop her," Alina had said to Bradley. "I can't stop her," Bradley had replied. "She's made her choice." They found her body at noon. Alina was the one who discovered it. She had been checking the perimeter cameras, trying to find evidence of what had taken Jimmy, when she noticed that camera 12, the one covering the eastern approach, the direction Sarah had taken, was offline. Not just not recording, but destroyed. The signal had cut out at 9:47 a.m., and when she pulled up the last recorded footage, she saw something that made her blood freeze. Sarah walking through the trees, her pace hurried, her head down. And behind her, following at a distance of 50 yards, a shape that shifted and changed with every step. A coyote, a man, something in between. It wore different skins with each frame of the video. First the mangy pelt she had seen in camp, then human clothing that moved wrong, then nothing at all, just a blur of darkness that seemed to absorb the morning light. "Bradley," she had screamed. "Bradley, get over here." They followed the camera's direction, moving through the forest with weapons ready, Bradley in the lead, Webb and Alina behind. They found the camera first, smashed against a rock, its lens shattered, its housing dented as if by teeth. And 10 yards beyond they found Sarah. She had been lured. That was clear from the scene. The thing had used Jimmy's voice or something close enough to make her turn. The footprints showed it. Sarah's boots turning, pivoting, moving toward a sound or a sight that had drawn her off her path. And then the struggle, the scuff marks in the dirt, the broken branches, the blood. So much blood. It painted the trees in arterial spray, coated the ground in pools that were already attracting flies. Sarah had fought. They could see that from the defensive wounds on her hands, the skin torn from her palms where she had tried to ward off claws or teeth. But the fight had been brief, one-sided, a dance where only one partner knew the steps. The body was in the cave. It wasn't a proper cave, just a hollow beneath an overhanging rock, a shelter from rain that had become something else, something darker. The entrance was marked with symbols, Navajo writing Alina recognized, though she couldn't read it, painted in blood that was still wet, still dripping. "Don't go in," Bradley said, his hand on Alina's arm. "Please don't go in there." But Alina had to see. She had to know. She clicked on her flashlight and stepped into the darkness. The smell was overwhelming. Copper and shit and decay, the stench of opened bodies and exposed organs. The cave was small, maybe 15 feet deep, and every surface was decorated with death. Bones hung from the ceiling on strings of sinew, arranged in patterns that suggested art or ritual or madness. Skulls were stacked against the walls, human and animal together, some fresh enough to still have flesh attached. And in the center, surrounded by a circle of stones, was Sarah. She had been positioned carefully, her arms crossed over her chest, her eyes closed, her expression peaceful. Too peaceful. The thing that had killed her had arranged her like a doll, like a display, like an offering, and it had left a message. On Sarah's chest, written in her own blood, were words in English this time, one by one. They all fall down. "It's playing with us," Alina whispered, her flashlight beam trembling. "It's not just hunting, it's playing, like a cat with mice." "We need to get out of here," Bradley said, his voice thick. "Now, right now. Forget the equipment, forget the proof, just run." But they couldn't, because as they turned to leave, they heard it, the radio. Jimmy's radio. The one he had carried, the one that should have been buried with him, was crackling from somewhere in the darkness, and through the static they heard a voice. "Help me, oh God, help me, it hurts so much." Jimmy's voice. Jimmy's exact voice, screaming, begging, pleading for rescue. "It's not him," Bradley said, though his face was pale. "It can't be him, he's dead, we buried him." "Help me," the voice screamed again, and this time it was joined by others. Sarah's voice. A woman's voice they didn't recognize. Dozens of voices, overlapping, crying out in agony and fear. "It's the Skinwalker," Alina said, her voice barely audible. "It's using their voices, it's learned their sounds, it's wearing them." The radio went silent, and from the darkness at the back of the cave something moved. They ran. They burst from the cave entrance and sprinted through the forest, not caring about direction, about noise, about anything but distance. Behind them they heard laughter, Jimmy's laughter, Sarah's laughter, a chorus of the dead mocking the living. They didn't stop until they reached the camp, gasping for breath, their clothes torn by branches, their hands bleeding from falls they didn't remember taking. Webb was crying, great heaving sobs that shook his entire body. Bradley was reloading his rifle with hands that shook so badly he dropped 3 rounds before he managed to chamber 1. "We're dead," Webb moaned. "We're all dead, it's going to kill us all." "Shut up," Bradley snapped. "Pull yourself together, we need to think, we need a plan." "A plan?" Webb laughed, the sound hysterical. "A plan for what? For fighting a monster that can wear our faces, for killing something that takes bullets and laughs." "Yes," Alina said quietly. "That's exactly what we need, a plan." She had been thinking. Through the terror, through the grief, her mind had been working, analyzing, searching for patterns. The Skinwalker, she was certain now that's what it was, the Navajo legend made flesh, had weaknesses. It had to. Everything did. "It didn't attack us in the cave," she said. "It could have. We were trapped, vulnerable, but it let us go. Why?" "Because it's playing with us," Bradley said. "Like you said, like a cat." "Maybe or maybe. Maybe it can't attack groups. Maybe it needs us separated, isolated." They looked at each other, the realization dawning. "Jimmy was alone when he died," Bradley said, "walking to the ravine by himself." "Sarah left alone," Alina continued, "went off by herself." "So we stick together," Webb said, hope flickering in his voice. "We never leave each other's sight. We sleep in shifts, 2 people awake at all times. We move as a unit." "And we find its weakness," Alina said. "There's something out here that can hurt it, something it's afraid of." She was thinking of Hosteen Blackhorse, of the old man who had faced the Skinwalker and survived. He had mentioned something before the ranger died, something about the Red One, about the Ancient, about Bigfoot. "The Bigfoot," she said suddenly. "The thermal signature from last night, it's real, it's out there. And the Skinwalker is hunting it." "What?" Bradley stared at her. "You think Bigfoot is going to save us?" "I think," Alina said carefully, "that we're in the middle of something we don't understand. 2 predators competing for territory. The Skinwalker is hunting us, yes, but that's not its main target. It's after the Sasquatch. It's after something bigger, older, more powerful. And if we can find the Sasquatch first, if we can get it to fight the Skinwalker—" "You're insane," Webb said. "You're suggesting we try to convince Bigfoot to fight a Navajo witch." "I'm suggesting," Alina said, "that we understand what we're dealing with. The Skinwalker is powerful, but it's not invincible. It can be hurt. It can be killed, but not by us. Not with guns and knives. We need help. And the only thing out here that might be strong enough to challenge it is the other creature, the Bigfoot." They spent the afternoon preparing. They moved their camp to higher ground, a rocky outcrop with clear sight lines in all directions. They set up overlapping fields of fire, positioned flares and explosives, created barriers of noise and light. They wouldn't kill the Skinwalker with these preparations, but they might slow it down. They might survive another night. And they searched for the Bigfoot. Alina led the hunt, following the thermal signature from the night before, tracking the massive creature through the forest. The signs were everywhere once she knew what to look for. Broken branches at a height no bear could reach, footprints in soft ground that measured 18 inches and showed an ape-like toe arrangement, tufts of reddish hair caught on bark, scent marks, musky, powerful, unmistakably primate, on tree trunks. The Sasquatch was here, it was real, and it was watching them. "It knows we're here," Alina whispered to Bradley as they tracked through the late afternoon light. "It's following us, staying just out of sight." "How do you know?" "Because I can feel it, because the forest goes quiet when it's near, because—" She stopped, her head cocking. From somewhere ahead, perhaps 100 yards, came a sound, a rhythmic sound, a pounding. Bradley raised his rifle, but Alina pushed the barrel down. "Don't," she said. "It's not attacking, it's communicating." They crept forward, moving from tree to tree until they reached a clearing. And in that clearing they saw. It stood 15 feet tall, its body covered in reddish-brown hair that caught the afternoon sun and made it glow like copper. Its face was almost human, flat, with a pronounced brow ridge, a wide nose, eyes that held an intelligence that was unmistakable. It stood on 2 legs that were thicker than tree trunks, its arms hanging to its knees, its chest broad and powerful. And it was beating a tree. Not randomly, rhythmically, patterns of strikes that resonated through the clearing, through the forest, sending messages that Alina couldn't understand but could feel in her bones. "My God," Bradley breathed, "it's real, it's actually real." The Sasquatch stopped. Its head turned slowly and it looked directly at them. Its eyes, dark, deep, ancient, met Alina's, and in that moment she felt something pass between them. Recognition, perhaps, warning, or invitation. "Don't move," she whispered to Bradley. "Don't speak, don't threaten." The Sasquatch studied them for a long moment. Then it did something unexpected. It reached up and broke a branch from the tree it had been beating, a thick branch, heavy with leaves, and it threw it. Not at them, past them, into the forest behind them. And from the forest something screamed. The Skinwalker. It had been following them, stalking them, and the Sasquatch had known. The scream turned to a growl and the thing emerged from the trees. It was different now, bigger, more confident. It wore Jimmy's skin, flayed and bloody, stretched over its coyote frame like a cloak. Its eyes burned with yellow fire and its jaws dripped with black saliva. "The red one," it said, its voice a wet gurgle that mixed coyote growl with human speech. I found you at last." The Sasquatch roared. The sound was like thunder, like an avalanche, like the voice of the forest itself. It rose to its full height, its massive arms spreading, its chest expanding, and it charged. The Skinwalker didn't retreat. It met the charge, moving with a speed that seemed impossible, dodging the Sasquatch's first blow, a swipe that would have torn a car in half, and raking its claws across the giant's flank. The Sasquatch bellowed in pain, and Alina saw blood, dark, thick, steaming in the cool air, flowing from 3 parallel gashes in its side. The Skinwalker's claws had found their mark, had cut through the thick hide like knives through paper. "It can hurt it," she whispered. "The Skinwalker can hurt the Sasquatch." "Then we're dead," Bradley said. "If that thing can take down Bigfoot, what chance do we have?" But the Sasquatch wasn't finished. It recovered from the first blow with a speed that belied its size, spinning and bringing its fist down like a hammer. The Skinwalker tried to dodge, but this time it wasn't fast enough. The blow caught its shoulder with a wet crunch that echoed through the clearing, and the thing was sent sprawling. It hit a tree, the impact shaking leaves from the branches, and for a moment it lay still. Then it rose, its arm hanging at a wrong angle, the bone protruding through Jimmy's stolen skin. "Strong," it said, its voice admiring. "Stronger than the others, stronger than the ones in the north, the ones in the mountains, but I am stronger still." It began to change. Alina watched in horror as the Skinwalker's form shifted, the the coyote features receding, the human elements expanding. It grew taller, broader, the stolen skin stretching and tearing as the thing beneath outgrew it. In seconds, it was nearly as large as the Sasquatch, a grotesque hybrid of human and beast, a creature that walked on two legs but had the claws and teeth of a predator. "I have worn many skins," it said, its voice now deep, resonant. "I have been wolf and bear and man, but I have never worn yours, old one. I have never tasted the power of the ancient." It lunged again, and this time the Sasquatch was ready. The two titans collided with a force that shook the ground, that sent shockwaves through the clearing. The Sasquatch's hands closed around the Skinwalker's throat, its massive thumbs pressing into the thing's windpipe, while the Skinwalker's claws raked and tore at the giant's chest, its face, its eyes. Blood sprayed. The Sasquatch roared, a sound of rage and pain, and threw the Skinwalker. The thing sailed through the air, hit another tree, and bounced off, landing in a crouch. It was laughing. "Good," it cried. "Fight me, show me your strength. I will wear it when you are dead." It attacked again, and again the Sasquatch met it. They traded blows, terrible, earth-shaking impacts that would have killed any normal creature. The Sasquatch grabbed a tree, uprooting it with a sound like tearing fabric, and swung it like a club. The Skinwalker ducked, the tree passing over its head, and then it was inside the Sasquatch's guard, its claws digging into the giant's belly, tearing through flesh and fur to reach the organs beneath. The Sasquatch screamed. It dropped the tree and grabbed the Skinwalker by the waist, lifting it high and slamming it down onto a boulder. The impact cracked the stone, sent fragments flying, but the Skinwalker only laughed. "I feel no pain," it shrieked. "I am beyond pain, I am beyond death." It twisted in the Sasquatch's grip, snake-like, and bit down on the giant's arm. Its teeth, too many, too sharp, dripping with venom, sank deep, and the Sasquatch bellowed, releasing its grip. The Skinwalker dropped to the ground and rolled away, rising with fluid grace despite the wounds it had taken. Both creatures were bleeding now. The Sasquatch's arm hung useless, the muscles severed by the Skinwalker's bite. Its belly was torn open, intestines visible through the gaping wound. The Skinwalker's shoulder was still broken, its arm dangling, and its ribs showed through the torn skin where the boulder had impacted. But neither showed signs of stopping. Neither showed signs of weakness. They circled each other, panting, bleeding, their eyes locked in hatred that spanned centuries. "We have to help," Elena whispered. "How?" Bradley demanded. "They're tearing each other apart. If we get close, we're dead." "The Skinwalker is winning," Elena said. "Can't you see? It's faster, more agile. It can hurt the Sasquatch, but the Sasquatch can't seem to hurt it badly enough to stop it. We need to even the odds." She looked around the clearing, searching for anything that might help. Her eyes fell on the boulders, the fallen trees, the terrain itself, and she saw it. "The ravine," she said. "There's a ravine half a mile east, deep, narrow. If we can lure them there, if we can trap the Skinwalker." "Lure them?" Bradley stared at her. "How do we lure two monsters fighting to the death?" "We don't lure them both," Elena said. "We just need to get the Skinwalker's attention." She stepped out from behind the tree, into the clearing. Bradley grabbed for her, but she was already moving, walking toward the combatants with her hands raised. "Hey," she screamed. "Hey, you Skinwalker." The thing turned, its yellow eyes fixed on her, and it smiled, revealing rows of needle-sharp teeth. "The scientist," it said. "The one who seeks what should not be found. I remember you. I have worn your face in my dreams." "Come and get me," Elena said, backing away. "If you're so powerful, if you're so strong, come and get me." "Elena, no," Bradley screamed. But the Skinwalker was already moving. It abandoned the Sasquatch, leaving the wounded giant bleeding on the ground, and loped toward her with a speed that was terrifying. Elena ran, her feet pounding through the forest, not daring to look back. She could hear it behind her, the sound of claws on stone, the panting breath, the laughter. It was playing with her again, she realized. It could have caught her already. It was letting her run, letting her hope before it struck. The ravine was ahead. She could see it through the trees, the edge where the ground dropped away into shadow. 10 yards. 5. She leaped, throwing herself over the edge, grabbing for a root that jutted from the wall, swinging herself into a narrow crevice. The skinwalker stopped at the edge, looking down. Its yellow eyes glowed in the darkness, and it hissed, a sound of anger and frustration. "Trapped," it said. "You think you can trap me? I can climb, I can fly. I am the walker between. I am not bound by your walls." "Then come down," Alina challenged, her voice shaking. "Come down and get me." It smiled and began to descend. But it was cautious now, its movements slower, testing each handhold. The ravine walls were sheer, treacherous. Even the skinwalker's unnatural agility had limits. Above, Alina heard a sound. A crashing, a roaring, the sound of something massive moving through the forest. The Sasquatch. It had recovered. It had followed. The skinwalker heard it too. It paused, its head turning upward, and for the first time, Alina saw fear in its eyes. "No," it whispered. "Not yet, I'm not ready." The Sasquatch appeared at the ravine's edge, silhouetted against the sky. It was wounded badly, its arm hanging useless, its belly torn, blood coating its fur. But it was still standing, still fighting. And it had a boulder. The rock was massive, the size of a small car, and the Sasquatch held it over its head with its one good arm. It looked down at the skinwalker, and then it threw. The skinwalker tried to dodge, tried to scramble sideways, but it was trapped on the wall. The boulder hit with a sound like thunder, like the world ending. The impact shook the ravine, sent rocks tumbling, and when the dust cleared, the skinwalker was pinned. Not dead, not crushed, but trapped. The boulder had caught its lower body, pinning its legs and hips against the wall. It thrashed, screamed, tore at the rock with claws that sparked against stone. "Release me," it shrieked. "Release me and I will spare you. I will spare all of you." The Sasquatch didn't respond. It simply stood at the edge of the ravine, looking down at its trapped enemy. And then, slowly, deliberately, it began to climb down. "No," the skinwalker whimpered, its arrogance gone, its power revealed as illusion. "No, please, not yet. I have not finished. I have not collected enough. I need more skins, more power, please." The Sasquatch reached the bottom of the ravine. It stood over the trapped skinwalker, its massive chest heaving, its blood dripping onto the creature below. And then it raised its good arm and brought it down. The first blow broke the skinwalker's ribs. Alina heard the crack, the wet crunch of bone. The second caved in its chest, stopped its heart. The third. The third was unnecessary. The skinwalker was dead. The Sasquatch stood over its kill for a long moment, swaying. Then it looked up, its dark eyes finding Alina in her crevice. It held her gaze for a heartbeat, too. And then it turned and began to climb. "Wait," Alina called out. "Wait, please, I need to talk to you. I need to understand." But the Sasquatch didn't wait. It climbed out of the ravine, disappeared into the forest, and was gone. Alina stayed in her crevice for an hour, shaking, unable to move. Eventually, Bradley found her, lowered a rope, pulled her up. They stood at the ravine's edge, looking down at the crushed thing that had been the skinwalker. "Is it dead?" Bradley asked. "I think so," Alina said. "I hope so." They didn't try to retrieve the body. They didn't want to touch it, to be near it. They marked the location on their GPS and walked away, back toward camp, back toward whatever remained of their expedition. Webb was gone. His tent was empty, his pack missing. They found his body 2 days later, 3 miles from camp, his throat torn out, his skin flayed, arranged in a pattern that matched the sheep in Hosteen Blackhorse's corral. The skinwalker had killed him before the final confrontation, had taken one more victim, one more trophy before it died. Alina and Bradley were the only survivors. They hiked out together, supporting each other through the forest, through the days of walking that followed. They didn't speak of what they had seen. They didn't speak of the Sasquatch or the Skinwalker or the battle in the clearing. But they both knew. They had witnessed something that few humans ever saw. They had seen the war between ancient powers, the struggle for territory that had nothing to do with human concerns, and they had survived. In the years that followed, Alina tried to tell the story. She wrote papers, gave interviews, published a book. No one believed her. The scientific community laughed at her. The cryptid community dismissed her as a hoaxer. The Navajo Nation refused to comment. She didn't care. She knew what she had seen. And she knew that somewhere in the Arizona forest, the Sasquatch still walked, wounded but alive, guarding its territory against whatever might challenge it next. And she knew, with a certainty that kept her awake at night, that the Skinwalker's death had not ended the threat. There were others. There would always be others. The ancient powers were awakening, and the world was not ready for what was coming. She received a package on the anniversary of the expedition. No return address. Inside was a photograph, blurry, indistinct, showing a red-furred giant watching from the tree line, and on her doorstep, when she checked, was a single paw print. Coyote large, pressed deep into the soil. She didn't report it. She didn't tell anyone. She simply hung the photograph on her wall and waited. Some legends, she had learned, didn't want to be found, but they also didn't want to be forgotten. The choice, she had discovered, was never really ours to make. The Skinwalker was dead, but the story was not over. It would never be over, not as long as the forest stood, not as long as ancient things walked in the shadows between the trees, not as long as there were people willing to look for them. Alina spent 6 months in therapy after the expedition. 6 months of explaining to psychologists and psychiatrists why she couldn't sleep, why she woke screaming, why she checked her locks 17 times before bed. 6 months of pretending that she believed the official story, that Sarah Kim and Jimmy Holloway and Marcus Webb had been victims of a bear attack, that Tom Bradley had died in a hiking accident, that the bodies had been too mangled for proper identification. She didn't believe it. She would never believe it. She had seen what she had seen, had felt the ground shake beneath the battle of titans, had smelled the blood and the musk and the rot of the Skinwalker's stolen skins. She had watched a 9-foot Sasquatch crush a supernatural witch beneath a boulder, had seen the fear in those ancient eyes, had understood that the world was far stranger and more dangerous than any government report would admit. But she couldn't tell the truth, not without being committed, not without losing what little remained of her credibility. So she lied. She nodded when the doctors spoke of PTSD and survivors' guilt and stress-induced hallucinations. She took the pills they prescribed and flushed them down the toilet. She smiled and said she was getting better when she was really getting worse. Because it wasn't over. The Skinwalker was dead, crushed in the ravine, its unnatural life ended by the Sasquatch's rage. But the memory remained. The fear remained. And something else remained, something that followed her back to the city, back to civilization, back to the false safety of concrete and steel. The dreams started 3 weeks after her return. Not nightmares, dreams. Vivid, hyper-realistic visions of the forest, the trees, the creatures that moved between them. She would find herself walking through the Arizona woods, her feet bare, her clothes torn, and she would know with dream certainty that she was being hunted. Not by the Skinwalker. The Skinwalker was dead, but by something else. Something that had watched the battle from the shadows, that had seen the Skinwalker fall, that had marked her as a witness, and decided that witnesses could not be allowed to live. In the dreams, it wore her face. It moved through the trees on 2 legs that bent wrong, on feet that left prints too large for human, too small for Sasquatch. It whispered in languages she didn't know, in voices she recognized. Jimmy's voice, Sarah's voice, Marcus's voice, all layered together in a chorus of accusation. "You brought us here," the thing in her dreams would say. "You sought what should not be found, you woke what should sleep, and now you must pay the price." She would wake sweating, her heart pounding, her hands clawing at the air. And sometimes, when the dawn came and she dared to look, she would find scratches on her window, marks on her door, evidence that something had visited her in the night. The police found nothing. The security cameras showed nothing. But Alina knew. She knew that death was patient, that ancient things had long memories, and that the Skinwalker had not been alone. She began to research. Obsessively, desperately, she dove into every book, every website, every archive she could find about Navajo witchcraft, about skinwalkers, about the dark traditions that the tribe kept hidden from outsiders. She learned about the Yi-Naldlushia, about the initiation rituals that required killing family members, about the incestuous practices that gave the witches their power. She learned that skinwalkers were not solitary creatures, but part of a network, a clan, a society of the damned that spanned the Southwest and reached back centuries. And she learned about the antidote, the protection, the ways that a person could guard themselves against the skin stealers. The jish, the medicine bundle, the tools of the Hatali, the singers, the healers. She found Hosteen Blackhorse's obituary online. The old man had died 2 weeks after the ranger, found in his cabin with his throat torn out and his jish missing. The police had ruled it a coyote attack, but Alina knew better. The Skinwalker had killed him, or one of his kin. Retribution for the blessing way, for the corn pollen that had burned its flesh, for the secrets he had revealed to the white scientist who came asking questions. But the jish had survived. Hosteen's granddaughter, a woman named Nijoni who lived in Flagstaff, had inherited her grandfather's tools, and Nijoni was willing to talk. They met in a coffee shop, a public place where neither could be easily targeted. Nijoni was in her 30s, tall and strong with the bearing of someone who had grown up on the reservation, who had learned the old ways even as she navigated the modern world. "My grandfather told me about you," Nijoni said, stirring her coffee though she hadn't added anything to it. "Before he died, he said a white woman would come asking about the Yi-Naldlushia. He said you had seen one, that you had survived." "I saw one," Alina confirmed. "I saw it die." Nijoni's eyes widened. "You saw it die? No one sees them die. They are immortal, unkillable, they." "It's not immortal," Alina interrupted. "I watched a Sasquatch crush it beneath a boulder. I watched it die." Nijoni went silent, her face pale. "The red one," she whispered. "The ancient, you saw them fight." "Yes." "And the red one won." "Yes." Nijoni was quiet for a long time. When she spoke again, her voice was barely audible. "This is bad," she said. "This is very bad. The Yi-Naldlushia are many, but they are not united. They fight each other for territory, for power, for skins. But they share one thing: they fear the ancients, the red ones, the tall ones. If one of them has killed a skinwalker, the others will be angry. They will want revenge. Revenge against the Sasquatch. Revenge against everyone. Against the red one, yes, but also against you. You witnessed the death. You carry the memory. In their eyes, that makes you responsible." Alina felt ice form in her stomach. "How do I stop them?" "You don't," Nijoni said. "You can't. Once the Yi-Naldlushia mark you, there is no stopping them. There is only delay, only protection." She reached into her bag and withdrew a bundle wrapped in buckskin. "My grandfather's jish," she said. "The tools of the blessing way. He wanted you to have them. He said you would need them." Alina took the bundle, feeling its weight, its warmth. "I don't know how to use these." "Then learn," Nijoni said. "There is a singer in Gallup who can teach you. His name is Frank Bitsy. Tell him Nijoni Blackhorse sent you. He will help you. He owes my family." "And if I learn, if I use these tools, will I be safe?" Nijoni looked at her with eyes that held ancient sorrow. "No one is safe from the Yi-Naldlushia," she said. "Not forever, but you can buy time. You can make yourself difficult to kill. And maybe, if you're lucky, you can survive long enough to die of something else." Alina spent a year learning from Frank Bitsy. A year of studying the blessing way, of learning the songs and the sand paintings and the prayers that could ward off evil. She learned to identify the signs of skinwalker activity, the unusual animal behavior, the misplaced objects, the strange lights in the night. She learned to protect her home with corn pollen and prayer sticks, to carry turquoise and white shell for protection, to recognize when she was being followed by something that wore borrowed skin. And she learned that the skinwalkers were not the only danger. The Sasquatch, the red one, was still out there, wounded but alive, and it too was watching her. She found signs of its presence in the city park near her apartment, broken branches at impossible heights, musky scent marks on trees, tufts of reddish hair caught on bark. It was tracking her, protecting her perhaps, or waiting for the right moment to finish what the skinwalker had started. She never saw it clearly, never got close enough to communicate, but she knew it was there, just as she knew the skinwalkers were there, watching from the shadows, waiting for their chance. The standoff lasted 2 years. 2 years of precautions and prayers, of waking every night to check her wards, of living in constant fear. And then, finally, the attack came. It was subtle at first. A coworker began acting strangely, asking questions about Alina's past, her family, her habits. A neighbor reported seeing someone who looked exactly like Alina entering her apartment when Alina was at work. She found dead animals on her doorstep, birds, rats, a cat, arranged in patterns that matched the ritual slaughter at Hostein's corral. They were testing her, probing her defenses, looking for weaknesses. She reinforced her wards, contacted Frank Bitsy for help, prepared for the worst. And when the attack came, she was as ready as she could be. It was a Tuesday. Alina was walking to her car after work, the parking garage dark and empty, her footsteps echoing off concrete walls. She heard the sound behind her, footsteps that didn't match her own, that came in the wrong rhythm, that made her blood freeze. She turned and saw herself. Not a mirror reflection. Another Alina standing 20 feet away, wearing her clothes, her face, her hair. But the eyes were wrong, yellow with vertical pupils, and the smile was too wide, showing too many teeth. "Dr. Carter," the thing said, its voice Alina's voice, but corrupted, twisted, filled with hunger. "We've been waiting for you." Alina reached into her pocket, her hand closing around the dish. "I know what you are," she said, her voice shaking but strong. "I know what you want, and I'm not afraid of you." The thing laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "Everyone is afraid," it said. "Even the red one is afraid. We are many now, we are strong, and we are tired of waiting." It moved, faster than she could track, crossing the distance between them in a heartbeat. But Alina was ready. She threw the contents of the dish into the air, shouting the words Frank Bitsy had taught her, the ancient Navajo that spoke of life and light and the power of creation. The corn pollen ignited, not with fire but with light, pure white blinding light that filled the garage and seared the skinwalker's borrowed eyes. It screamed, a sound of rage and pain, and staggered back. "The blessing way," it hissed, its face shifting, melting, revealing the coyote features beneath. "You think that will save you? You think one old man's magic is enough?" "No," Alina said, "I don't." She wasn't alone. Frank Bitsy had taught her that the blessing way was not meant to destroy, but to purify, to heal, to drive out darkness with light. But he had also taught her that some darkness was too strong for light alone. She needed help. She needed the other power, the ancient power. "I'm sorry," she whispered, not to the skinwalker but to the darkness beyond it. "I know you don't want to be found, but I need you, please." For a moment nothing happened. The skinwalker recovered, its vision clearing, its lips pulling back in a snarl. It lunged. And then the wall exploded. Concrete shattered, rebar bent like paper, and through the hole came a roar that shook the foundations of the building. The Sasquatch, the red one, it had followed her, protected her, waited for the moment when the skinwalkers revealed themselves. It was bigger than she remembered. Its wounds had healed, its fur grown thick and full, its muscles heavy with renewed strength. And it was angry. The skinwalker turned, its eyes wide with terror. "No," it whispered. "No, not again, not here, not in the city." The Sasquatch didn't give it time to run. It charged, crossing the distance in 2 bounds, its massive fist swinging in an arc that caught the skinwalker full in the chest. The impact sent the creature flying, smashing through a parked car, its stolen bones breaking with audible cracks. But it wasn't alone. From the shadows, from the stairwell, from the darkness itself, more shapes emerged. Coyotes, men, things in between. A dozen skinwalkers, maybe more, converging on the garage with eyes that burned with hatred and hunger. "The red one of them said, its voice a chorus. "We have waited long for this. We will wear your skin, ancient. We will drink your power." The Sasquatch roared, a challenge that shook dust from the ceiling, that set off car alarms for blocks around. It rose to its full height, 9 feet of muscle and fur, and prepared to meet them. Alina ran. She knew better than to stay, better than to think she could help. This was not her fight. This was a war between ancient powers, and humans were merely collateral damage. But she didn't run far. She took cover behind a concrete pillar, watching through a gap as the battle began. The skinwalkers attacked as one, a coordinated assault that spoke of planning, of intelligence, of shared purpose. They swarmed the Sasquatch, their claws raking, their teeth tearing, their bodies shifting and changing to avoid the giant's blows. The Sasquatch fought back with terrible power, each strike crushing bone and flesh, each roar scattering the attackers like leaves in wind. But they were many, and it was one. For every skinwalker it killed, 2 more took its place. Their claws found its flesh, their teeth severed its tendons, their magic, dark, forbidden, stolen from the earth itself, weakened its limbs and clouded its mind. Alina watched in horror as the Sasquatch stumbled, its blood painting the concrete red, its movements slowing, its roars becoming whimpers. It was losing. The combined power of the Skinwalker clan was too much, even for the ancient giant. And then she remembered. The Jish, the blessing way, not as a weapon but as a gift. She reached into her pocket and found the last of her supplies, the turquoise, the white shell, the abalone, the elements of healing, of protection, of life. She stepped out from behind her pillar, into the middle of the battle, and began to sing. The song was Frank Bitsy's, Hostine Black Horses, generations of Navajo healers who had learned to speak with the earth. It was a song of welcome, of gratitude, of alliance between human and nature. It was a song that said, "We are not your enemies. We are your friends. We ask only for protection, and we offer healing in return." The skinwalkers heard her and laughed. "The white woman sings," one of them mocked, its voice Jimmy Halloway's voice. "She thinks her songs can save the beast." But the Sasquatch heard too, and it understood. The giant's eyes cleared. Its wounds stopped bleeding. Power flowed back into its limbs, power borrowed from the earth, from the song, from the ancient covenant between human and nature that the skinwalkers had violated. It roared again, and this time the roar was different. It was a roar of thanks, of alliance, of rage renewed. The battle turned. With Alina's song giving it strength, the Sasquatch fought with new fury. It grabbed 2 skinwalkers and smashed them together, their bones breaking like twigs. It kicked another through a concrete wall, the impact crushing its chest. It bit, tore, ripped, destroyed. The skinwalkers broke. They had not expected this, had not prepared for a human to intervene, for the ancient songs to be sung by an outsider. They scattered, fleeing into the night, leaving their dead behind. The Sasquatch stood panting among the carnage, its fur matted with blood, its body covered in wounds. It turned to Alina, its dark eyes meeting hers, and in them she saw something she had not expected. Gratitude, recognition, an understanding that transcended species. "Thank you," she whispered. The Sasquatch nodded. Actually nodded, a gesture so human it made her want to cry. Then it turned and walked away, disappearing into the night, leaving her alone in the ruins of the parking garage. The police came eventually. The FBI, the media. They found dead coyotes, dead things that didn't match any known species. They found Alina's car destroyed, the concrete wall demolished, the security cameras fried by electrical surges. They found her standing in the middle of the carnage, singing softly to herself, her clothes torn, her face bloody, her eyes wild. They took her to the hospital, then to a psychiatric facility. She didn't resist. She had nowhere else to go, no one else to tell her story to. The Skinwalkers were defeated for now. The Sasquatch had survived, and she had played her part. But she knew it wasn't over. The Skinwalkers would return. They always did. They were patient, ancient, patient, and next time she might not be so lucky. She spent 3 months in the facility, undergoing evaluation, treatment, therapy. When she was released, she moved to a cabin in the woods, far from the city, far from people. She lived alone with her jish and her songs and her memories. And sometimes, on clear nights, she would look out her window and see a shape watching from the tree line. A massive shape, covered in red fur, standing guard. The Sasquatch had found her, was protecting her, would continue to protect her, she knew, as long as she honored the old ways, as long as she respected the forest and its inhabitants. The final package arrived on the 5th anniversary of the expedition. This time there was no photograph, just a single object, a tooth, long and curved, clearly not human. And a note written in clumsy block letters, "Friend." Alina kept the tooth. She wore it around her neck under her shirt next to her heart. And when the dreams came, when the Skinwalkers whispered from the shadows, she would touch the tooth and remember. Remember the battle. Remember the alliance. Remember that some monsters were not monsters at all, but guardians, protectors, ancient friends of humanity who had been waiting all along for someone to ask for help. She never published another paper, never gave another interview. She lived quietly in her cabin in the woods, and she waited. For the Skinwalkers to return, for the war to resume, for the chance to stand beside the Red One again, to fight for a world that didn't know it needed saving. Some legends didn't want to be found, but Alina had learned that some legends were worth finding, worth knowing, worth protecting. And she would spend the rest of her life making sure that the world stayed safe, even if the world never knew it. The forest was dark, the forest was deep, and in its depths ancient things still walked, still fought, still protected the balance between human and nature. Alina Carter was part of that balance now, and she would not fail. 5 years later, a new expedition set out. Younger scientists, bolder explorers, armed with better technology and bigger egos. They went to the same forest, the same mountains, seeking the same proof. They found it. But they also found something else, something that had been waiting for them, something that wore the skins of the dead and laughed with voices stolen from its victims. The massacre made the news for 3 days. 14 people dead, their bodies flayed, their organs arranged in patterns that spelled words in a language no one could read. Alina saw the reports. She recognized the signs. The Skinwalkers had returned. She packed her bag, her jish, her memories. She walked into the forest one last time, following the trail of death, following the scent of ancient evil. The Sasquatch was waiting for her. It had grown older, its fur graying, its movements slower. But its eyes were still bright, still fierce, still ready for war. "Together?" Alina asked. The Sasquatch nodded. They walked into the darkness together, the scientist and the monster, the human and the ancient. The Skinwalkers were waiting, their numbers replenished, their hunger undiminished. But this time Alina was ready. This time she knew the songs. This time she had a friend. The battle lasted all night. The forest shook with the sounds of combat, with roars and screams and the wet crunch of breaking bone. When dawn came, the Skinwalkers were dead, their clan destroyed, their threat ended. But the Sasquatch was dying. Too many wounds, too much blood lost, too many years of fighting. Alina held its head in her lap, stroking its fur, singing the blessing way one last time. The giant looked at her with eyes that held gratitude and peace and something else. Hope that the alliance would continue, that others would learn, that the ancient ways would not be forgotten. "I will remember," Elena promised. "I will teach others, I will keep the faith." The Sasquatch closed its eyes, its chest stilled. The great heart stopped beating. Elena buried it in the forest, in a grave marked with stones and songs. She stayed there for 3 days, mourning, praying, making peace with the loss of her friend. And then she walked out of the forest, back to the world, back to life. She wrote a book, the true story this time, no holding back, no fear of ridicule. She told the world about the Skinwalkers, about the Sasquatch, about the war that raged in the shadows. Some believed her, most didn't. But the book sold and it spread, and slowly, gradually, the truth began to take root. Other witnesses came forward, other survivors of encounters with the ancient powers. They found each other, formed alliances, shared knowledge. The war was not over, it would never be over. But now, for the first time in centuries, humanity was fighting back. Not with guns and technology, but with the old ways, the songs, the blessings, the alliance between human and nature. Elena Carter lived to be 87. She died in her cabin in the woods, surrounded by students, by friends, by the descendants of those she had saved. And on the night she died, witnesses reported seeing something in the forest, a shape, tall and red-furred, watching from the tree line. Not the same Sasquatch, a different one, younger, stronger, carrying on the legacy. The alliance continued, the protection held, and in the depths of the forest, ancient things still walked, still guarded, still remembered the woman who had learned to sing. Some legends don't want to be found, but Elena had proven that some legends once found could become friends, could become allies, could become the salvation of a world that had forgotten how to believe. The forest was dark, the forest was deep. But it was not empty, and it was not unguarded. And as long as there were people like Elena Carter, willing to learn the old ways, willing to sing the ancient songs, willing to stand beside monsters against even worse monsters, the world would survive. The final line of her book read, "Some legends don't want to be found, but the ones that matter, the ones that protect us, they want to be remembered, they want to be honored, and they will stand with us if only we have the courage to ask." She was buried next to the Sasquatch in the forest they had defended together. And on her grave, visitors left offerings, turquoise, white shell, corn pollen. And sometimes, if you visited at dawn, you could see a shape in the mist, tall, red-furred, standing guard. The alliance held, the protection continued, and the legend lived on. Thank you for listening to today's stories. If you enjoyed, please leave a like and subscribe, so you don't miss the stories yet to come.